Oh, yeah. There we go. Please stand for a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have more agendas, Liz? In conformance with the Open Public Meeting Law, Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, adequate notice of this meeting, setting forth the time, date, place, and purpose of this regular meeting through notice posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, mailed to all requested and paid for same, and published in the Suburban Trends. Roll call, please.
Mayor, sir.
Here.
Council President. Here. Councilman Bennett.
Here.
Councilman Dewarren's excused?
Work-related, yes.
Okay. Councilman Giacomet.
Here.
Councilwoman Polidori. Here. Councilman Bennett.
Here.
With us this evening is our Borough Attorney, Joseph Ragno, and our Borough Administrator, Kevin Boyle.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start off with a proclamation. May is National Foster Care Month, and the Women's Club is taking that on as another one of the many duties they do down here. We have Jamie Dykes from CASA, who's going to come up in a little bit, maybe say a couple words. What I'm going to ask is, any Women's Club members come up and you can help me read the proclamation that we're going to read? And President Reicher and
You get the microphone now, Mike. Pick you up.
I'm okay.
Borough of Pompton Lakes, Office of the Mayor, proclamation. Whereas we all have a responsibility as individuals, neighbors, community members, and citizens of Pompton Lakes to help create healthy, nurturing, and safe experiences for children. And whereas National Foster Care Month is a time to reflect on the foster caregivers and child welfare professionals who are dedicated to keep children safe from abuse and neglect. And whereas foster care families who open their homes to children and make a positive difference in their lives deserve respect, devotion, and support in their communities.
Whereas there is a need for more families to volunteer in the foster care system to serve the more than 10,000 children and youth in New Jersey who are unable to remain at home through no fault of their own. And whereas the court-appointed special advocate, CASA, programs have a record of public service protecting the safety and well-being of New Jersey's foster children. And whereas each year, men and women of all backgrounds are appointed by judges to advocate for the best interests of foster children in court and other settings as CASA volunteers. Now therefore,
I, Mayor Michael Sarah, do hereby proclaim May 29th as Foster Care Month in the Borough of Pompton Lakes. I urge all citizens to support organizations such as CASA of New Jersey and engage in activities that strengthen families and communities to provide the optimal environment for children. Borough of Pompton Lakes, May 2019. Congratulations on that. All the work with you. Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Thank you. Club that helps us. Thank you. Yes, and of course, the Women's Club is on. Good board. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, just, okay. Everyone. Good. Oh, you want to take a picture? I want to take a picture. Somebody hold that right.
thank you.
I'll make the last one. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Jamie Dykes, and I'm the current board president for Passaic County CASA. So I would like to thank the mayor, municipal council, Women's Club, and really all the residents for the tremendous support that they have shown for CASA. CASA is an acronym for Court-Appointed Special Advocates. We have 11 staff members and 125 volunteers currently that go out. They either call when a judge appoints a CASA to a child in the foster care system. They are assigned a case, and they stay with that child, sometimes for 2 years or longer, to make sure that as that child goes through the system, they are there to make sure that the needs of the child are met through either medical needs, educational needs, family relationships. You have to understand that they've been removed from their home, and that this is a very traumatic experience for them. So the CASA is there to be that advocate, and in a lot of cases, that constant for that child in the foster care system. A child who receives a CASA is 8 times less likely to re-enter the system than a child that does not have a CASA appointed to it. So it makes a huge impact. And as I say, primarily, it's a volunteer-based organization. And if anybody's interested, we're always looking for more volunteers. We have an excellent staff, excellent training. We have different seminars where people can come down and check it out without any obligation. So I urge you to do that. But tonight, I'm very humbled and I'm very honored to receive this on behalf of all the people at CASA. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a full house today, and most of you are here for the same reason. So what we're going to be doing in this agenda is moving over right to the second reading. You'll all have a chance to speak at the second reading. So we're going to be moving right to the second reading of the final adoption of the ordinance. But before we get there, I just want to give some updates that I had. Yesterday, I was fortunate enough to meet the governor and sit and talk a little bit. And it was a question on his mind. He came out of me, and there was a bunch of mayors there. And one of the mayors, he did come up to me at the end of the meeting and say, "I'd like to talk to you about what's going on over there." So we're going to set up a phone call probably in the next couple of weeks, and we'll have a conversation about what's going on here. So, that's good. I like to see our people get involved and find out what's going on here in the little town. The next thing is I did get a call back from the commissioner's office. She will be coming to town probably in the next 2 weeks. I think it's going to be on a Wednesday. I've reached out to some members of the audience. Lisa and Ed will be able to invite about 18 people to come to listen to that conversation. I will invite another 18 people, and hopefully there'll be some dialogue back and forth between the commissioner and the residents that are there in the audience. I really do give the commissioner credit for coming down here. She's been down here in the last 6 months twice, so I thank her for doing that. And then finally, the last thing I have is some new information came to me from the EPA and from Comores that the property over in DuPont, or Comores, however you want to look at it, has been deed restricted for residential housing for the last 2 years. There is a deed restriction put in place there. That means that no housing residentially can be put there. It's filed with the state. It's a regular deed restriction. I was speaking to my attorney right before we started. Doesn't think it can be changed, right? There's no...
In my opinion, it's in perpetuity. It's a deed restriction that is recorded at the county level.
So that's new information that we didn't know, and I was surprised that the EPA did not come forward with that, or Comores to let me know that. So that does play into what we're talking about a little bit tonight. Again, we're going to go right into the second reading now. I'm going to ask everybody before we get there to please be considerate of everybody talking. Everybody tries to keep it to 5 minutes, please. We have a lot of people here, and there's a lot of conversation. We don't want to be here till 2 o'clock in the morning. So let's try to make this move forward. So with that, Liz, whenever you're ready, we'll go right there.
Ordinance 19-13, an ordinance amending, deleting, and adding certain provisions of the Borough Land Use Code dealing with zoning changes for the DuPont Comores Tract Block 100, Lots 3, 6.01, and 7.
Motion to open the meeting for public comments on ordinance 1913. Councilman Begg?
Second.
Councilman Venon, all in favor?
Aye.
Against. Before we start, you can only ask questions at this moment about this ordinance. Any other questions about other business in town would have to wait till open session. You can also come back and talk in open session about this ordinance if you feel that's what you want to do. With that, would anybody from the audience like to speak? I was going to say no? Okay. Step up.
Like everybody plays the game of ladies.
Yes, I see that.
Lisa Riggiola, 283 Ryerson Road, Lincoln Park, New Jersey, Pompton Lake Hill. I'm here. I wanted to ask, I mean, other than the residential, the new news you just found out, what are the specific reasons for rezoning the DuPont toxic factor property? The specific reasons for it. And if you could please explain in detail what DuPont's involvement has been in providing any input, if any, on the rezoning of their property to hybrid industrial or industrial. And the third part of it is, can you give the public any valid reasons why we can't just keep the zoning as it is for now to ensure that we get the strongest, we maintain a strong platform for the highest cleanup we can get that technology has to offer. And I say that because the minute we change the zoning, we open the door for a weaker cleanup. I confirmed that information with a few of my go-to experts just today. We will open the door for a weaker cleanup by rezoning to hybrid industrial or industrial. So that's it.
Okay, so I'll start with the last question you asked, which was the, why are we doing the rezoning? We're doing the rezoning because the zone set there right now does not fit our master plan. It does not fit our use for the future of that property. Our job here on the council is to find a future use of that property. It is not to set a zoning standard to clean. We don't zone to clean, that's illegal. We can only zone for what is the future use of the property. The best use for that property for all the residents of Pompton Lakes would be a commercial zone. I use the word Amazon, I'm not saying it's Amazon, but an Amazon-type building would come in there for data storage, bring in multi-jobs, bring in lots of revenue for taxes, and the example I'll use is Totowa just brought in Chase Bank into a 125-acre lot that they're doing their, it's zone commercial, that they're doing data storage for Chase Banks there. Okay, it's a huge plus for Totowa. It's a windfall for them, for the town. So that was the first one question. So that's why we're asking to rezone it. The second question is, why don't we leave it where it is? We can't leave it where it is because it's zoned right now as 70 acres of it is zoned, a small part is residential, the rest of that is zoned recreational. Recreational has less of a cleanup than a commercial. So we're actually zoning an area that would be better for the cleanup than what it is now. Recreation is less of a cleanup. So we're asking to go to commercial. Thirdly, the EPA, we're not making a decision about cleanup. I know this is a hot topic and everybody's involved in it, but we're not zoning for cleanup. We're zoning for what's the best use. The EPA is going to take in all these pieces and then make a determination on how the cleanup's going to go there. Part of that piece is going to be a deed restriction that's on the property. They have to address that. They can't ignore that. Okay, they're going to look at our zoning. They're going to look at all the options. EPA has told me numerous times they could come back with a residential standard cleanup or something in between. They don't know. They're not there yet. We don't have that number. We have to zone to where we were. Was there another question? You had another question in there? Was that it? That was the first? Yeah.
What about DuPont's involvement, if any, in providing input to the rezoning?
You'd have
Their property.
Right. You'd have to ask the planning board. I was not part of the planning board. They had subcommittees discussing that. I only was attending the planning board meetings. I did not go to the subcommittee meetings. And then it was brought, I do have the planning board chair, which we'll get up and talk in a little bit, to state a step value, a chronological order of how things went. But I wasn't really involved with the everyday talks on how that went with the planning board. Anyone else from the public like to address? Sorry.
Yeah, Rick Lombardo, Pompton Lakes.
Just need an address, just a number.
I'm sorry,
No, just a
3rd
number.
Schuyler Avenue. Yeah, well, this may not be directly, you guys are not directly involved in the cleanup standards. What you're doing, the ramifications of changing the zoning could ultimately save DuPont millions of dollars in cleanup fees. So this is, you know, the 1,200 people and the 420 homes that have been poisoned, you know, by DuPont are a little bit skeptical about making life easier for DuPont at this time. And by putting people there, to me, and this is only my opinion, seems to me like you're opening yourself up for future health problems for these people, or at least,
When you say putting people there, what do you mean? I don't...
putting, say, moving the recycling center there, using Pompton Lakes residents, you know, as pawns to go there and everything, is only setting yourself up for future health problems for these individuals. So, I personally am against this, and I don't know how this got contrived, because this could ultimately save DuPont millions of dollars in cleanup. And that's what it is. You're not personally doing it, but these are the ramifications of such a move. So whoever thought of it is brilliant, you know, as far as helping DuPont is concerned. And that's the way I see it. And the residents, I think, a lot of residents are also in support of what I just said. So thank you. Have a good evening.
So to address that, one of the things you brought up is, we're actually saying we don't want to put residents there. So we're trying to say we would never support putting residents there.
No, I'm not saying...
No, please, no back and forth, no back and forth. What I'm saying is, we're supporting the fact this council does not want to see residents go there, even for the future use. Because as we found out about the vapor that came out 20 years later, who knows what could come out to the property 20 years from now. Putting residents there would not be the smart move right now. But putting commercial there is the smart move. It has to be used for something. It can't sit empty. Our town deserves better than a property that large sitting empty. We deserve to get the tax ratables off of that, okay? The zoning that you're talking about, that is up to the EPA. I will tell you that if the EPA tomorrow zones it, and it comes back with a more stringent number, and DuPont fights that, we're not taking DuPont's side of that. We're going to take the EPA's side of that and say, the EPA asked for this more stringent, we accept that, and that's what we want. And that could happen. It could also go the other way. We all know that. But we're not setting a precedent. We're not, you know, one of the conversations I've had with the EPA and the DEP and Comores in the last couple of months has been, I feel that they're at fault for putting us here on this council in a fighting ability back and forth between the members of the town and us. They should be here telling us what they're doing, explaining what they've been working on, explaining where this goes, but you don't see any of them here, from the EPA, from the DEP, or from Comores. And that bothers me a lot, because we're doing the best we can for our whole town. They have a cleanup they have to do, and they should be here talking about it, and they're not. So if the EPA decides after this all goes through and they put all these pieces of the puzzle together that they want more restrictive numbers, this council's probably going to support that. And DuPont or Comores will come here demanding this or demanding that, and we probably will say, if EPA thinks this is what it is, then this is what it is. Any other residents? Is this just about this ordinance? Yep.
Walter Boudreau from Iron Ford Square. I'm not directly involved with this, but, so, the rezoning is to make it easier, really, to get ratables on that property. But it might be at the possible expense of homes near the area there. If the cleanup is not going to be as stringent under the new zoning, it might be a problem in the future, right?
Well, that's not necessarily true. So we have to remember, when it's cleaned up to commercial standards, recreational standards, or industrial standards, those are all set at standards that are safe to the public for whatever that zone is. So if it's commercially zoned, their cleanup would be zoned to a cleanup that is safe for commercial use. There might be a better cleanup with a residential, and there might be less of a cleanup with recreational. That has nothing to do with what this board does. This board is just taking what the planning board had suggested. The planning board came up with this through 2 years of work, that this was the best option for that property, and we're just saying that's the use we want to see. We have nothing to do with the cleanup. When they come to us, we're going to fight for the strictest cleanup we can get there. But we have no say in the cleanup at this moment.
In a sense, too, if you do move ahead with this, it might expedite the cleaning up, too.
Yes.
It might lessen the contention, perhaps.
I would hope.
Hey, also, if you're gonna put a, recycle center back there, you're not gonna put it someplace where it's gonna hinder a potential buyer of that land? They might want it a little pristine, and maybe you could stick it way in the corner somewhere.
So let's talk about the recycling, because I'm hearing that a lot. This recycling is nothing that we're even in steps talking about. It's one of the options that we're looking for to move the recycling center. Our DPW. Our DPW is in an area that flooded last year during a storm. We lost a lot of equipment. It's an old building that needs a lot of work, so we have to move it. This is one of the many options that we're looking at. There is no plan set in place by far to move it to DuPont. But if we were to move it to DuPont, it would be in a site that would be out of the way of everything else. It would be carved out just for us.
Yeah.
But that is many years in advance. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Please step up.
Antonelli, 5 Lambert Street. So it's very hard to comprehend all this, but what I heard you say, Mr. Sarah, was DuPont doesn't want residential here. They deed restricted it so it can't have that. But if you put another building on there, a commercial building or whatever, that the EPA will determine how it's going to be cleaned up. But if it's not cleaned up to residential standards, and you said because they don't want residents there, but there are residents very, very close to it. So now, you're going to potentially, the chances are, if they're not going to clean it up to this spec, they're going to possibly cap it. Where is that contamination going to go? Again, I meant to look up this Mount Laurel site. If any of you ever have a minute free, look it up. It was capped, and later on, the contamination seeped through and caused additional damage to the residents surrounding it. This is a big thing. Now, they're not going to maybe put the residential on there, but as you can tell, everyone's begging, pleading that we leave it to where it is so that it at least deems the best cleanup possible, not the lighter one, because, well, commercial is going on there. And people are going to be working in these places.
Cleanup is guided to that. So the cleanup would be safe enough to work there. And
But
we have-
there's people living
So let me
around
finish
it.
on that.
That's not going to go away, okay? Unless DuPont wants to buy out all those properties and then you can let that property be what you want it to be. And all the 450 homes or pieces of property around it. So that's where our biggest concern is, that this is going to lighten the severity and the need for the proper and best cleanup.
Okay, you've heard me say this numerous times. None of us here are experts on the cleanup. The only experts, in my opinion, and in the federal opinion, is the EPA. The EPA and the DEP, and the DEP commissioner will tell you this probably when they come next Wednesday, or whenever they come, that there is nothing leaving the site at this moment. They monitor it, there's wells out there, there is nothing leaving the site. The site is dirty. Yes, no question, the site is dirty. They have to clean up the site. We're talking about lead and mercury and heavy metals. Don't confuse the vapor and the lead and mercury. They're two different things. The vapor, there is no solution right now to clean vapor worldwide. They're working on that. That's why systems are being put in place. Lead and mercury, there's two ways to clean it. You dig it or you cap it. Okay, those are the two accepted methods for the DEP and the EPA. If those groups are telling me nothing is leaving the site, I have to believe them. Okay, so the next thing for them to do is clean up the site, which is what we're trying to do right now. Any other residents like to speak? Please step up.
Hi, Regina Cisco, 98 Lincoln Park Road in Quantick. I would like to speak to the issue of the science around the DuPont contamination in Pompton Lakes. I have heard it stated in previous meetings with the council and the EPA that the information provided by the polluter regarding the contamination is scientific facts. According to the Google Dictionary, the scientific method is defined as a method of procedure that has characterized natural science since the 17th century, consisting in systematic observation, measurement, and experiment, and the formulation, testing, and modification of hypotheses. Galileo stated that criticism is the backbone of the scientific method. Yet in Pompton Lakes, any science provided by the polluter is accepted as a fact by the EPA, the DEP, and the borough. However, in Pompton Lakes, there has been no testing done outside that of the polluter and its contractors. There has been no independent testing, no peer-to-peer review of the data. Residents have been asking for further testing for over a decade and have been repeatedly ignored. Now the council wishes to vote on rezoning the property to commercial status, which will result in a less stringent standard of cleanup moving forward. Yet we still do not have true scientific conclusions as to the extent of the contamination outside of the polluter's own word, which many affected people, including myself, do not trust. In my opinion, moving forward with a rezoning will be devastating for the residents, especially those living in the toxic plume neighborhood. Capping will not solve the groundwater issue. It can only create additional problems as it may affect the water table. In Love Canal, the cap failed and the area was recontaminated. What happens to the health of the people who work in the businesses built on the contaminated site? Can you guarantee their health will not be affected? Is the borough willing to risk potential legal action in the future should people begin to become ill as a result of exposure? And what happens if the plume itself becomes further contaminated over time? There is no guarantee that this property will be safe as long as the toxic contamination remains. There is, at the very least, reason for caution here. I respectfully urge the council to vote against this ordinance, as the coming generations will have to live with the consequences of your decisions here today. Please make them responsibly.
So to address some of the concerns you brought up there, I understand that some people are not happy with the way the testing is done and all that, but this is the way the EPA works throughout the country. This is not just happening here in Pompton Lakes. When the EPA comes into a site, they're responsible for doing the background, the testing, the wells. They don't hire outside places to do that information. They have a polluter that's held responsible, who to this date has done everything the EPA and DEP has said. Now, look, the first day that they don't do what they're supposed to do there, I want to know about that, because that shows us they're not working with us. Right now, they are working with us, not the town, the EPA. They're never going to allow outside testing, so that's not going to work. I think what you said was very true. The vapor part of it has to still be addressed. But we're not talking about the vapor now in this cleanup. We're talking about the heavy metals, lead and mercury. The capping has nothing to do with the vapor. The capping has to do with the lead and mercury. They're not capping the whole property. I can tell you that, 100% sure of that. It will be a combination of both ways, digging and capping. Just like a gas station in town that was just done, they capped it over for other reasons. So the vapor they're still working on, that's why you need a system. Every resident should have a system that keeps your home safe. Hopefully in the near future they'll come up with a better way to treat the aquifers. Right now the aquifers, the upper aquifers are getting a little better just because of time, and those show up in the well testing. And as time goes by, hopefully those numbers will get better. You spoke about a lot of watts and ifs and hows. We can't talk about that. We don't know what those watts or ifs or hows will be. They could go just the way you said, or they could go the other way and be perfectly clean in 20 years and everything's good. And about the fact that commercial property, the cleanup is geared, if it becomes commercial, to safety regulations for commercial people to be there. That's why the commercial standard would be in place. So saying that people would not be safe working there, they do this all over the country to clean up the standards, which are well buffered, to the number, to make sure it is safe for people working there. What it wouldn't be safe for is a daycare center or a residential, okay? But for commercial, there's set standards there that are a little higher than residential, and then recreation's a little higher than that. So there's many different steps involved. It's the DEP and the EPA's decision. This council has no say on that. Anyone else from the public? Yeah.
Gita Curtis, 111 Ramapo Ave. I've spoken to you here twice, and I've sent you all an email, so I'm pretty sure you know where I stand, but I want to be crystal clear about this. Voting yes to this ordinance will cause the EPA, the NJDEP, to use a much lower standard of cleanup. Voting no will cause the EPA, NJDEP to use a much higher standard. It's that simple, and yes, master plan, yes, and, I say it like that, I'm not belittling it. I know there's a lot of work involved, I know there's all sorts of committees and all sorts of things, but the bottom line is you keep saying you can't affect it, but you are affecting it. Your action tonight has consequences, and lasting consequences. So if you have to go back and revise the revision on the master plan, so be it. So be it. I'm sorry. I know it's a lot of work, and we'd all like great things for our town. But we can't have those great things until we clean that up as much as we can. That important. So please vote no. Thank you.
So what you said in the beginning of your statement there was untrue, because there is no set cleanup in place yet. The EPA will decide what the cleanup is. We don't know what that cleanup is. It is not set in stone that it is going to be less of a cleanup because it's a please, that if it's a set commercially, there'll be less of a cleanup. They could come back, the EPA, we have no say in this, the EPA could come back and say, we understand what you're saying commercial, we understand there's a deed restriction, but these are the numbers we want to see, which could be closer to residential. That could happen. That has not been set yet. So to come up here and say that it's set by the decision we make, we are not zoning to cleanup. We are zoning for use. There's two different things. The EPA will take care of the cleaning, we will take care of the zoning. EPA has not made the decision. That's why this has to happen, so they can make their decision. And hopefully, they come up with a stringent decision, and I'm sure this mayor and council will support that stringent decision. And I'm sure DuPont will not be happy with that decision either, by the way. But we're not here to talk about the cleanup numbers. We're here to talk about the zoning. And I understand they're tied in. I know it sounds like they're not, but they are tied in. I understand that. But this is our job to do that for the whole town, not just for 50 people or 100 people in this room. I have to worry about 11,000, 12,000 residents. Anyone else from the public interest? Nope, can't, sorry. Nope, can't.
It's not, you said it.
Can't, I'm sorry, you can't. It's not true. It's not true.
It is true. I spoke to the EPA and the NJDEP this week, and they confirmed it.
They
I want to
can't,
make sure.
well, okay, but they can't confirm it if they don't have a cleanup yet. They can't confirm anything until they have a cleanup. All right, thank you, thank you. Anyone else? I saw a hand go.
Good evening, George Paul, 1104 Colfax Avenue. You're sitting there, Your Honor, and you're telling us there's a lot of unknowns. So how can you make a decision with all of these unknowns to change the category of cleanup? What you are in essence doing is condemning the 400 homes and the people who live there to continue to get sick. And let's stop talking about just lead and mercury. How about arsenic that's coming through? I can't believe that the EPA told you there's nothing coming off the site. Their own audit said that the pump and treat system wasn't working. Look at what's happening with, excuse me, it's my time, sir.
No, you asked me a question, go ahead.
What about the chromium that's being moved around Garfield? Are we waiting until that happens here in the plume? What about the arsenic that just raised its ugly head up with Ford, up in Ringwood? $21 million now. And a few years ago, they said, oh, no, the Superfund's clean. It's about as much credibility as you have right now. You don't know the level of toxicity. Have you asked? Again, every 2 weeks, I ask the question, what's left in the lake? You don't know. What's coming through the plume? You don't know. What's in the north part of the lake? You don't know. Yet you have enough information to change and condemn these people to remain living with the tetrachlorine, the tetracycline that is making them sick, and additional chemicals. You don't even know the entire extent the contaminants concerned. None of you. Yet you can sit there and make a decision that's going to change and possibly weaken. The only way Pompton Lakes will ever be safe is cleanup, not capping. Yes, I am. Thank you.
So you're saying we don't know the numbers. Are you saying, and I don't want you to answer this, just like, wait,
Do you know the
don't
numbers?
answer
No,
me,
you don't.
please. Just like you said, don't answer me, I'm asking you not to answer me, I'm asking questions like you asked me.
Okay.
So you're telling us that you're an expert in the numbers, and you know better than the EPA. Don't answer, or I'm gonna ask you to leave.
There's no transparency.
I'm gonna ask you to leave.
From the DEP.
Sit down, please. I'm gonna say it one more time, sit down, okay? We are not the numbers people, the EPA are. If you have a question with that, I told you this numerous times, you need to go talk to the EPA, okay? And ask those questions. And if they won't get you answers, follow up with that and say, how come you haven't gotten the answers? You're very vocal here, you should be just as vocal with the EPA.
What did we elect you for, sir?
We do it also, but if you're very concerned about that and it's something you want, you need to follow up. We can't get you that number if they're not going to give it, if they haven't done the testing on it. Above, like, north of the lake, they're not going to do testing north of the lake. They're just not. It's not within their area of pollution from DuPont. It could be from anywhere else above the DuPont plant. All right, anyone else from the public like to address?
Helen Martins, 59 White Way. When you say the EPA and the DEP make the decisions, and if they're not happy with that, the figures or the whatever DuPont says, they will rebut it. Well, that's not true. When the lake was going to be cleaned up, there were several spots in that lake, and the EPA wanted them to clean them all up. And DuPont went back and said, no, we are not going to clean them all up, and they let them off the hook, and they let them hot spots remain. So how is that going to affect this? Because DuPont has the upper hand here. And the vapor, you say the cleaning up of that site is not about vapor. It is, because those contaminants go in the ground and come underneath with the water and vaporize under our homes. And if that isn't cleaned up fully, then that will still remain. And this is what we're fighting about. Second of all, you say you don't know what they're going to do to it, and the next minute you're saying about capping. We don't want capping. Capping don't last. Capping fails. And this is not a cleanup. If we let them have this as a commercial site, believe me, I swear to God, they are not going to clean this up to the highest standard that is possible. And all the people that live in the plume are going to continue to suffer and worry about what is underneath their homes. And I've said this a million times to you. Please do not rezone this. Please don't rezone it.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to address?
Ed Meekum, Howard Street, Pompton Lakes. First, I want to thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate that. And I don't think there's one person sitting in this room that doesn't want ratables in this town. I mean, we're all taxpayers. I think we all feel the same thing. You said a few minutes ago that it just came to light that it was deed restricted on DuPont property. Well, if you attended the 2017 planning board meeting, Ed Merrill got up and stated that on the record, because I read it in the minutes. So that's been around for a while. Does anybody have a copy of that document?
We do.
Yeah, you do? We already have residents living on property that was donated to this town by DuPont. It's the senior housing. Okay, so we have a lot of people living on property that was donated by DuPont. I believe that 40 acres of that was proposed residential was right next to that site, on the top of the hill.
You mean in the first master plan?
Right, in the first master plan.
It's on the hill, yes.
Right, we also, I find that the new master plan and the zoning ordinance is a little deficient, where if you read the examination report, it does not show the flood hazard areas on the DuPont property, which is a deficiency, because the last master plan did show it. It doesn't show the recharge areas that were identified as coming off the steep slopes off of the Ramapo Forest, which helps to flush clean water into that contaminated water that some of the people are suffering with. And as another point was, as I stated to you before, at the last meeting, you brought up a lot about, let's make it bigger in your minutes, and we can always make it smaller.
Bigger,
As far as development goes, there was no restrictions on size. I mean, that thing is so big, there's no ordinance that can match that, because the setbacks are, you got 60-foot high buildings. We already have a building that's 300 feet away from me, and it's over 60 feet high, and I could see it and hear it. And then you made a comment, you said, well, you bought your house when it was there. And I'm not saying this to be sarcastic. We bought our home when DuPont was there.
Yeah.
Not before Royale was ever there. And in 1999, on April Fool's Day, when they went out of business, it was the happiest day of our life.
Sure.
Because they had multiple explosions over there. Our ceilings had fell down. Walls had been cracking periodically. We were sick and tired of it. And our environment was sick and tired of it. I went through 140 homes being cleaned up 6 feet deep, all through my neighborhood, only to have DuPont move me into a contaminated home with vapor intrusion, when you say trust the DEP and the EPA. In 2001 and 2002, they both knew about vapor intrusion, but failed to reveal it to the people of Pompton in 2001. So, I give you all the credit in the world for taking the beatings that you're taking on this, but, you know what, I think you really, once in a while, you gotta put a little bit of Vaseline on and punch back, because I know they're $1 million a year tax, rateable, but guess what? These people are paying a lot more than that altogether around you. You know what I mean? And we all deserve better. I mean, I don't think anybody will disagree. I ask you personally to not vote on that ordinance until you change it. None of the flood hazard areas, like I said, are mapped in there. And I also got one thing that's a little bit less than 2 minutes.
You got about a minute, so go.
All right. Well, our residents went to the planning board meeting, and they went there and they wanted to speak about the zone change. Now, to me, the zone change on the DuPont property, because it's contaminated, is one and the same. So if you're talking about the zone change, you're talking about a zone change on a piece of contaminated property. This is what the residents were told.
Outside of planning, so I'll ask the board if they want to open this up to public comment, but if we do, the public comment will be limited to the master plan use and not to any other issue, including environmental remediation. The board has absolutely nothing to do with that.
Okay.
So, by Mr. Simone stating at that meeting, I'm just saying, by him stating at that meeting that he's limiting the public's testimony at a meeting, when he's opening it up to the public, they can get up and say whatever they want. You can't tell them you only have to talk about the zone change, because the zone change in this case is one and the same as contamination.
I'm sure. You're past your clock. How quick?
Yeah, I forgot about it.
Real quick.
Really important for this community, I believe.
Quick.
DuPont was funding an environmental officer, and we don't have them anymore. Are they still giving you the funds?
I don't know.
Well, if they are, and if they're not, I ask that you get them back and hire an expert for us now.
Okay, to go back to a couple things you brought up, we had our planners and engineers look into the flood aspect that you had brought up a couple meetings ago. The property that I've been told is not in a flood zone up there. There is no flood maps that show it's in a flood zone. We are getting that, actually have someone working on that right now to answer that question, to see if it is in a flood zone. And again, that goes back to our DPW going there or not going there. It's not a big deal, but we want to know if it's in a flood zone. Right now, preliminarily, it doesn't look like it's in a flood zone. I will address I'm sure the planning board chairperson will come up and speak, but I'm pretty sure he spoke to his attorney and was told he was allowed to say that, through the planning board, and I don't know the specifics, I wasn't part of the conversation, but I think at the end of the day, he was basically saying, we're here to talk about the zone and not about any contamination that's on the property. But I'll let him address that if he wants to. Anyone else from the public like to address? Please step up.
Karen Dean, 24 Central Avenue, Pompton Lakes. I just want you all to remember the meeting I was at when DuPont was here, and Katie was the mayor then. They sat back there and they laughed. The people from DuPont, what do they think? We're gonna clean that whole lake up for them? That wasn't nice. And I never heard anything about you guys talking to that man about, those people about that.
No, there was a conversation.
I mean, really.
There was.
And then, in other words, I don't really want this done. Okay?
Thank
But
you.
I want you to all remember what that DuPont did. And then Commerce is coming, can we speak to them?
Where?
Can we have something where we can come to this meeting?
I'm all for that. I would love that. If that's something
Okay.
I would set that up. If they would do it. I mean, I will force them to do that. I've been asking all my groups to do that. It's something I've been asking for a long time. Anyone else from the public like to address? Please step up.
Susan Schmidt, 22 Orchard Street.
Can't hear you.
I would just like to know, if you talk about DuPont, that they're going to do what they're supposed to, if they had been honest when I was looking at my home, I would have never bought it, because it was contaminated then. Now I live in a home that's contaminated, I have medical issues. And you want us to trust them?
So you say you spoke to DuPont. What did they tell you? Because if it's
They
illegal...
told us the home was contaminated. They didn't come out and tell us till 7 years later.
Oh, wow.
We lived in the contaminants for that long.
Right, but they didn't know at the time it was contaminated.
They did know.
Well, there's...
It took them 7 years to come out.
The EPA, and that's something, that's a good point to bring up to the EPA and the DEP. I brought that point up to them numerous times, and they've said that they did not know. They were in the searching of information, this plume information, this contaminated aquifers was new to them, and they were getting more information. At the time, and I was part of this with a lot of people in this room, they brought in experts from Oklahoma and from all others to kind of understand what was going on there. They didn't come right out and say, this is polluted, because they didn't know yet. They knew lead and mercury was contaminated, but they didn't know about the vapor. And as time goes, it was very new. It's a very new thing. So as time goes on, they've learned more, and, you know, I can't speak for what happened before me, and if that did happen, that's wrong. I would tell you that is wrong, but I can't say that did or didn't, because I wasn't there. I can tell you right now that if they told me something that they didn't release, I would be upset with that. So if that happened now, I would be upset with that, but it
But I think we
hasn't.
lost it. It's been over 30 years.
I understand.
Our homes wouldn't be contaminated if they would have cleaned it up a long time ago.
Yeah, but there is no cleanup for the vapor right now. That's the problem.
But it wouldn't be there if they would have cleaned it up.
They can't clean it up. There's no way to clean it up.
No, if they would have cleaned up DuPont, that contamination wouldn't be down.
No,
Underneath our homes.
the damage was done 100 years ago when DuPont was there, from the ammunition that was put in the ground, and it seeped into the lower aquifers. Once it gets into the lower aquifers, there is no right now, there is no accepted method to clean that up. That's what the vapor concern is. The lead and mercury is separate. There's two separate things here. There's lead and mercury and heavy metals, and there's the vapor. The lead and mercury can be dug out or capped. Vapors cannot right now. So that's why a system is very important to be on a house. They're still involved. They tell me, and again, I take everything that I hear from
But they
Comores.
also raised those levels too.
They did not raise the EPA raised the levels.
Yeah, we were supposed to be that safer for us.
Look, at the end of the day, unless President Trump comes down here and oversees the cleanup, there's no way this is going to happen. I'm just saying, it's the only way. If you're not trusting EPA, the next step is the president. That's it.
So we got nobody.
That's not true. You have the EPA.
I don't trust them.
Thank you. Please, one more time. I don't want to throw you out. Please. Anyone else? No, you spoke already. I'm only letting everybody speak once. Only once. No, only once. I heard second.
Jimmy Rose, 410 Colfax Avenue, Pompton Lakes. Nobody's arguing that residences should be built there. I think you're preaching to the choir when you keep saying that we don't want residences built there. I don't think anybody in the room wants residences built there. I have two questions. You're talking about future use, and you're referring to things like data storage. Not that that's what's going to be there, but you're using it as an example. Will future use be implemented before the cleanup?
No.
Okay. Can that property be rezoned after the cleanup?
It can be rezoned at any, well, we were just discussing that.
Rezoning, yeah.
Rezoned, yes, but the non-residential cannot be.
Correct. So is there a compelling reason to rezone it now
Yes.
before the cleanup?
Because the reason we're doing it now is because they have to start shopping the property. We hope to have this cleaned up in the next couple of years. If the EPA moves forward quick enough, we could have this cleaned up in the next couple of years. So there's been people already approaching the EPA and my office and Comores about how do we get to use the site. They won't even talk to us if the site is not zoned in commercial. They won't even talk to us because they understand that process would take years to make that happen. So they're not even coming to talk. They call and then they say, well, it's zoned still recreational. They don't want to talk to us. They want to know when it's zoned commercial, let me know.
What about the residential part?
What about the residential?
Why does that have to be rezoned? So if residential is the highest cleanup, and then there's commercial, and then there's recreational. Why are we changing the residential zone?
Because there's a deed restriction there, and the EPA is going to look at that when they make up their plan. The deed restriction says residential can never go there. So if you're trying to tell someone to clean to residential standards, but residents could never go there, do you understand the problem that's going to cause?
I think it puts the onus on them then. Then I think it becomes their fault that they're not cleaning it to the
Who's
standards
they?
that we want.
Who's they?
EPA or Chemos. Who's ever in charge, I'm not really
The
sure.
EPA will say, this is what we want it cleaned to, and then the Comores will say, and I don't know what that is, but Comores could say, we're not going to clean it to that, and we're taking it to court, and it'll sit there for 20 years.
And then you could rezone as commercial at that point then, too.
But we have property sitting there for 20 years that is not being cleaned. The goal is to clean the property.
I think it's more than 20.
No, I'm saying going forward now, they could just stop it, could throw it into court right now. Things are moving forward right now. If they stop tomorrow, then it just stops.
But you don't know that they're going to do that.
I don't know.
All I keep hearing is, I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. So why don't we go for the best option that we have available to us?
Because that's not how it works. We can't zone, we cannot zone for cleanup. We can only zone for use.
I know, but zoning does affect cleanup.
I
We've already
understand,
established
but we
that.
can't talk about cleanup in our zoning. We can only zone for use.
Nobody's asking you to talk about...
Well, you're saying, why don't you make it residential, but not put residential
No, I'm
there?
saying, why don't you keep it residential, because it already is residential.
But not put residential there.
Right. Is there a requirement that if it's zoned for residences, that residences have to be put there in a certain time frame?
No, the problem is, so here's another thing you're not understanding.
Okay.
Right now, there's 50 acres that are zoned residential, only 50 acres.
Okay.
They're on a steep slope, so you wouldn't allow it to be built there anyway. The rest of the property will be zoned whatever it is. It would be just those 50 acres that would be addressed with the zoned residential. The rest of the cleanup would go commercial or recreational, whatever it's set at, if we leave it alone. So what you're asking for is to make the cleanup less by leaving it alone. If we leave it alone right now, the recreational cleanup is less of a standard than the commercial cleanup, except for those 50 acres where the houses would go. That would be a residential cleanup. The rest of it would be a recreational cleanup, which nobody wants.
Then why can't the recreational part just be rezoned for commercial?
You can't, you got to zone, it's a master plan. You have to do the whole thing. It's not spot zoning. It's illegal. Spot zoning is illegal.
But it's zoned in two different zones now.
Right, but we're doing the whole property now. So we're rezoning the whole property.
And does that have to be done?
Yes, it has to be done, yes.
Is there something we can look up to find out why
You
that has
can,
to be done?
leave my guess, look it up, whatever you want.
Okay, I don't even know what to look up.
I don't either. I mean, you'd have to get an attorney and speak to them, but...
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public would like to address? See...
Peter Cesar, 314 Woodlawn Avenue. As just stated, it's probably going to be quite a while before anything actually gets built there.
No, I don't agree with that. I'm hoping for a 5-year plan, and I think the commissioner will say that when she comes.
Okay.
Is that a long time?
At a previous meeting, you had pushed a little more towards about 10 years, but that's fine. And I agree that probably, what the proposed changes you're making are probably good for when that time comes. but I believe that time is on our side, and in respect to the comment you just made, that you have prospective people that are looking at it now, that's great and all, but there'll be people knocking on your door then when that time comes as well. So, I know we're trusting on the EPA, and you're right, you have to go to the president if you want to go above the EPA. This particular president has weaponized the EPA quite a bit, and I can give an example of just, they're now allowing coal ash to be dumped into rivers in West Virginia. So let's just keep that in mind. And I understand that it's debatable, and I know you're saying that our zoning is not effective in cleanup, and some others will say something else. But if nothing else, the political statement that this would make, and the political pressure this would actually put on the EPA and the DEP to lean their scales a little more towards the higher cleanup level, would be tremendous if this council said, you know what, we're on principle going to delay this rezoning, because history has shown big corporations have taken major advantage of Americans over time. And on principle, we're going to delay our decision until the cleanup's done. At the very least, until after your meeting with the governor, at the very least, until after our meeting with the DEP commissioner. I'd say at the very least, until this lawsuit works its way through the courts, because I think we're going to find out a lot more stuff. And that stuff may be applicable.
I just want to answer that part before I forget.
Sure.
So the problem is, and I hear what you're saying about putting it off, and we thought about that, but the problem is going to be, the EPA will not move forward with a cleanup schedule until we zone it. So then the property just sits, and nothing gets done. And that's not helping anybody.
Well, I mean, it's currently zoned. I mean, and the master plan can be submitted as is, minus that one section. I mean, you zone more than just the DuPont property in this master plan, right?
Yeah,
This master plan is not just the DuPont property.
No.
You can submit everything else and leave that property as is.
But then that property, the EPA will not look at a cleanup plan until that property is zoned. If we keep it as the zone that it has now,
Yeah.
that's recreational. That's less of a cleanup.
I understand that, and I'm actually attacking this more from a political pressure point of view than the...
And I hear that, I understand.
Exactly. So, and again, I mean, I've heard you lament over the coverage and the trends and the record over the site. Imagine what it would be, how wonderful it would be to have those same newspapers say that this council took a stand for political reasons, and that would make news, and the governor would talk about that, and his DEP would listen to that. Listen, last election we talked about how there wasn't a lot of dissent in this council. Now is your time to dissent.
Another minute.
Thank you. I'm done.
Anyone else from the public like to address? See?
Love when he says, see,
I'm going to say it differently.
Randy hitting 443 Montclair Avenue. People are speaking their hearts again, Now we're missing one councilman, so that's only 5 votes is going to be here because the mayor does not vote.
That's correct.
We have a meeting possibly with the governor on this issue?
I have a phone call possibly with the governor.
Okay. We have a meeting with the commissioner.
That's a definite, yes.
Right now, you had stated that for 2 years, the planning board has been researching it. So that's a 2-year period. Master plan, you were discussing, it should have been done a year ago. Correct. So we're talking time spans. Why you need to do it now with so many people speaking their heart is ridiculous. We have 5 councilmen that are going to vote on this. Also, you talked about the planning board.
Could I just answer your question there?
Sure. Go ahead.
The reason we're doing it now is because they're done with the lake cleanup. So the next stage is the property cleanup.
Right.
If they were still working on the lake, we would have time, but they're done with the lake. So the next cleanup stage is the property.
Good. That's excellent. But what I'm saying to you is, we have a meeting come up with the commission. I mean, if you delayed this vote even 2 months, so that this voting public could come and listen to the meeting of the commissioner, your phone conversation with the governor. I mean, let that come to light. And then the residents here will see, maybe you're correct. But at least they have an idea of what's going on. There's no reason to rush to vote right now.
So the meeting with the commissioner has nothing to do with the zoning. She will not talk about zoning at all. She will not talk about zoning at all. She will just address the cleanup.
Correct.
Okay, and how she feels things are going with Camores as a person of a polluter who's damaged the property. That has nothing to do with how the EPA looks at the cleanup standards. Those two things are different. The EPA is the one who's going to put the cleanup standards, not the DEP. The DEP has no say on it.
Correct.
It's going to be the EPA.
But we know that these two are related. Zoning and the cleanup are related. So you keep separating them. We keep putting them back together.
They are separated.
This is like a basketball game, one-on-one here. You know, we put them together, you separate them.
I'm much shorter, so I'm losing, I know that.
I know, I'll definitely outdunk you, that's for sure. But listen, the planning board recommended this zone, correct?
That's correct.
Now, is it correct that you sit on the planning board?
I do.
Is it correct that Councilman Begg sits on the planning board?
He does.
Is it a conflict that he's gonna vote on this from the
Not at
planning
all.
board?
That's how it's supposed to be. That's the way the law sets it up. It's purposely done.
I'm just asking a question.
Okay, so you're up to your 5. You got anything else?
Oh, I'm up to my 5? No, I'm about 4.5.
Okay.
But yes, you know, I mean, we have an election coming up of which you're up, and Councilman Begg and Councilman Polidori. This is very important.
Yeah, of course it is. I agree with
This affects
that.
right on through.
Yes.
And, I would hope that the council people would vote no on this.
Okay, thank
And
you.
postpone it to after the meeting so that everybody can get the correct word on that.
Thank you.
No reason to vote no.
Anyone else in the public like to address? Seeing no one, I'll have a motion to close the public session. So moved. Councilman Bennett.
Second.
Council President Wright. All right, so we're going to go right now directly into the vote. There still will be 2 more.
Did you want me to comment on the boards was outside the public or not?
Yes, go ahead. If you would like to address at the planning board directly.
Yeah, I would. Is this a public comment or is it,
Planning board.
Yeah, I would have to say no. You have to do it in public comment. You should have done it during the meeting. You should have done it.
Well, I was asked specifically about a
Yeah,
couple
but
things.
Yeah, but I closed it. I'm going to have to agree with that. I'm sorry. You should have talked in the session. That's it. Okay, so what we're going to do is move right on to the vote here, and then we're going to go into our agenda, which is normal. Motion to approve ordinance 1913 for final adoption. So moved, Mayor. Councilman Bennett. Second. Councilman Bay. At this time, before we get to a roll call vote, if any council person would like to say anything, I'm going to give everybody the opportunity to speak. I will let you do that. If you don't have to either. Does anybody want to say anything?
I would just say this, you eloquently expressed the need for the property and the way it should be zoned. There's a restriction on that property to residential as it is. The steep slopes that are against the residential also. You can't put residential on that property.
Please.
So if we want to proceed with the cleanup on this property, we have to change the zoning on it. You have to understand it. And it's hybrid commercial is it. Beyond that, the EPA bases a lot of what they do on the exposure that those properties are going to be. If it's residential, you're right. There's a need for a bigger cleanup. If it's commercial, it's different. If any of that substance gets into the groundwater, that cleanup condition is even more strict than residential is. And that there is no lead, there is no mercury in that groundwater, to the best of everyone's knowledge. I mean, it's not that I haven't lived in that area, because I lived in the plume for 20 years at one time. My son just bought a house in the plume. My mother lived in the plume for 20 years. She lived to be 103. There's no guarantees of anything.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Mayor,
Go ahead, please.
I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out, giving your thoughts, and writing us, coming here speaking, and I respect your comments. I might disagree, but thank you for at least expressing your comments and giving the other side of it. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
And I'm just going to add to that, I will tell you that every council person up here has spent a lot of time making this decision. This is not a decision, they've all asked me for guidance on who to talk to. They've all reached out to the EPA, the DEP, even Comores, to try to get the best votes. They hear from you guys, they want to get a lot of information. This is not a decision that someone's just making because they're here today and making a decision. They've spent a lot of time and energy doing this, and it's not an easy decision, one way or the other. I don't know what it's going to be, but at the end of the day, this is not an easy decision either way. So with that, can I have a roll call, please?
Councilman Bay?
Yes.
Councilman Giaconetti?
Yes.
Councilwoman Polidori?
Yes.
Councilwoman Riker?
Yes.
Councilman Bay?
Yes. Okay. All right, hold on. Guys, if you'd like to leave, you can leave now, but no talking, please. All right, thank you, but if anybody would like to leave, you can leave. If you'd like to speak, speak, but if you're going to talk from the audience, I'm going to ask you to leave, okay? Okay, so now we're going back to our agenda on the first page. Motion to open the meeting for public comments. Councilman President Riker? Second. Councilman Bennett, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Now would be your opportunity, Mr. Simone, if you'd like to speak.
Sure. Mike Simone, West Lennox Ave, Pompton. The points I was going to try to make, basically is summarizing the planning board's function in this procedure, because there was some, I believe, people were unaware of certain things that were done or had to be done. So there's a timeline that was followed. The master plan is required by the municipal land use law of the state of New Jersey to be redone every 10 years. And consistent with that, the planning board started in 2016 to say, let's develop a committee that will address the re-examination of the planning board. At that time, I was not on the planning board, but I did get some information from the planning board, people that were there, just to get the timeline consistent. In 2017, they had mostly master plan subcommittee monthly meetings in addition to the regular planning board meetings. And the way the master plan is re-examined is you look at all the parts of the master plan, which is a voluminous document with there's traffic, there's recreation, there's public properties, there's environmental issues, there's zoning, there's recommendations that come from that. So, as a result of all of that planning board meetings and discussions, on December 19, 2017, the planning board held a public meeting specifically for recommending changes to the master plan. Public input was taken at that meeting. Anyone that was at that meeting would have had a chance to say...
Please address,
I'm sorry. Anyone that was at that meeting would have the chance to say whether they were for it, against it, or anything else they had to say. So, the bottom line is that on December 19, 2017, the board voted to approve the master plan with the recommended changes, which included, among all the other items, the changes to the zone and the DuPont site. In January of 2019, the planning board authorized the board's planner, and it's a professional planner from a firm, it's not a member of the board, to look into the master plan to get it to be conformed with the zones, with the ordinance. So the process is the planning board starts to assemble what has to be done. It always has to go to the borough council because the ordinance can only be filed by the council. So in January, we authorized the planner to work on that. In the end of February, it was sent to the borough and borough attorney for review. And then the borough attorney actually creates the ordinance that you guys get to approve. And that was done in the first reading as ordinance 1913, on March 27th. Because it's part of the planning process, the council then sends it back to the planning board to make sure that the ordinance is consistent with the intent of the master plan that was already approved. And on April 16th, the planning board reviewed ordinance 1913 for consistency with the master plans. Now, there were some comments made about public input. The review of the master plan referral from the Borough Council does not require an open public session. The public session is at the end of the meeting, and anyone's free to comment at that time on anything that we discussed. As a courtesy, and in conjunction with consultation with the board attorney, I thought it was in the best interest to have public input taken at that time, because there were people in the audience that I thought would like to have been heard. So, because the only thing the planning board was doing that night was looking to see whether the consistency between the ordinance and the master plan showed to be identical. And if they were, then the board would take a vote and say, okay, yes, the ordinance is consistent. And if I run over my 5 minutes, I'm gonna ask, because this is a board function. And
I'll give you another minute, just catch up with a minute. But
so the bottom line is, the only reason we took public input, we wanted to hear what people had to say. The board simply voted, yes, the ordinance is prepared by the borough attorney and voted on in the first reading is consistent with what was already approved in the master plan in 2017. That is why we have no interest in the cleanup standards. It is not part of our purview, and consequently, that was where it ended. And for somebody to bring a tape recording of that and insinuate something otherwise, I believe is untrue and unfair. The other thing is that...
that's about it.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
All right, you come back second.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, anyone else from the public here? Please step up. Well, I actually pointed to Maria, but go ahead. Go ahead. Come on.
Ed Beacom, Howard Street, Pompton Lakes, New Jersey. First, I'm sad that you voted for that ordinance, but let's just start back 2017 when you did your public notice. 2017, January, February, December, you did your public notice for the planning board hearing on a master plan. You had a public hearing. It shows up under new and unfinished business in January, February. March, it falls off the agenda. Nothing on there whatsoever. April, May, June, it shows up under new and unfinished business. If that master plan re-examination was done and voted on in 2017, why is it constantly being discussed and other changes being made, because I've read them, and suggestions being made by the attorney to make a difference, and dispatching the planner out to the site for a site visit after you passed a resolution about it, and then coming back, in 2019 and trying to complete it? That was my issue with the timeline. However, I don't care at any public meeting, once you open it up to the public comment, and I'm going to say this once and once only, the zone change on a piece of contaminated property is one and the same. So you should be able to speak about anything you want. If I wanted to open up myself at that meeting and say, everybody is a lollipop here tonight, I could say that. You can't limit public testimony. So maybe somebody should go to school or give them a little bit of an education.
All right, so to address what you just brought up, a couple things. First of all, you brought up the noticing. My attorneys informed me, and we didn't know this, well, I didn't know this at the time. When you're dealing with a master plan, we don't even have to notice. We don't have to put it in the paper. We don't have to do the 200 yards or 200 feet away. So we did do that, but we don't need to do that. Secondly, what the chairperson was mentioning was he opened up an extra open session on just the change ordinance of the zone, not about general talk. There was another opportunity after that meeting for general open to comments where anybody could have said anything they wanted. So I think what he's trying to address is the fact that he was only talking about the master plan concerns at that time. And your opinion is your opinion, and his opinion is his opinion. Anyone else? Maria, I know you had your hand up.
Maria Kent, 17 Glen Court. I just want to say that I'm not allowed to speak on cleanup standards and so on because of my position. But the DuPont cleanup has been a very complex, probably one of the most complex sites in this area, even through the country probably. It's very complex. So it's very understanding that people don't understand what tax mean and what residential standards versus, industrial standards and how that plays on their personal lives. It becomes very personal to an emotional issue. So with that said, and I think it's very important that mayor and council continue to work with the EPA, to work with the DEP on allowing those people that are responsible for coming up with standards for any facility, even if it's not DuPont, to work very closely with the community. And I think the EPA has been here every Thursday for the past, 10 years. These are the questions that they should be answering you. They really should. And if there's and I know you're not going to make everybody happy, and you can't. But when I moved here in 1986, I bought my home. Pompton Lakes was one of the most quaint towns. It had great taxes. It was affordable, and it allowed families to come and live and grow. And since DuPont closed, I guess right around that time, the ratables have been just dwindling to a point where there's nowhere to go. Now, I know you're making all kind of efforts to bring in the redevelopment downtown and bringing in more homes, but, I think we all agree that, bringing more homes in doesn't always make your taxes going to go low. Sometimes it affects it the opposite way because of all the needs that we all require and want for living in an urban area, an area like this, in a metropolitan area like this. So the only thing I can say is, if you can clean up this site and make sure that the Comores and DuPont folk clean up this site and address the residents, then you're helping the 400 and some homes that are in that area. But the other 10,600 of us are going to thank you, and I personally thank you for doing that, because I can't afford to live here anymore. I can't. I just can't. And everything I read in the newspaper, everything I see on the social media, get out of New Jersey. And Passaic County is the highest tax county in the United States of America. That to me is I can't believe it. And then we have our high taxes. So, and I've known throughout these different elections, everybody says on their stabilized taxes. I'm assuming you're doing this. You're rezoning this. The planning board is approving this. Not because you're in the pockets of DuPont. I'm assuming that, but if I'm wrong, please tell me. But that, in fact, you want to make this town stable again, because right now we're not. And if that's what it takes, then I support your decision to support this zoning. Thank you.
So taxes are, a number one concern. It's always an agenda item, but I feel, especially myself, that's been a priority for me for the last 4 years, to try to stabilize our tax base, and that is very important. This is just one of the tools that we can use to help stabilize our tax base. Redevelopment's another tool. Shared services, which we do a lot of, is another tool. There's lots of tools that we can use. You brought up something that was very important, though. We zoned it. This is what we did. We zoned it. If tomorrow EPA comes out with a very strict cleanup on that property, and you're all saying that can't happen, it could happen. Okay? If the EPA decides on their own, through all the pieces in the puzzle put together, this is the standard we want to clean to, this council is behind that. We're going to support that. DuPont is probably not going to be happy with that number, with what they're asking. At that point, they can come here, they can go to the planning board, they can go wherever they want. I'm pretty sure this mayor and council, if the EPA is recommending it because there are experts in this, then we're going to go along with that. And that's just the way it is. So what we did tonight was zoning. The next part is cleanup. But taxes are a part of this, yes, thank you. Anyone else from the public like to address? Well, Lisa.
Mr. Regiola, 283 Raritan Road, Lincoln Park, New Jersey. I just want to say, I read who has the top property taxes in New Jersey just recently, and just so you guys know, Morris County was higher than Passaic County.
Yeah, they are. That's correct.
So I just wanted to make that correction, and I live in Morris County now, and let me tell you, I know people paying $30,000 a year in taxes. So, you may think your taxes are high here, but they're higher other places too, but they maybe have more to offer. Maybe that's why, I don't know. I just want to say that the problem with what you just did is you made the people in the plume actually feel more like stepchildren. You're unwanted stepchildren more now than ever before. I know you're well aware of the repercussions that you just happened with your yes vote on that issue. But what you also did is you opened the door to allow DEP, EPA, and DuPont to go ahead with a weaker cleanup. Like you said, Ringwood, Ford is the responsible party in Ringwood. Just to make you guys aware, the borough of Ringwood is also a responsible party. Ford is paying for the cap because that recycling center got changed and put onto a different piece of property known as O'Connor. EPA had recommended to remove all the contaminants from the O'Connor landfill. But because the borough of Ringwood had something to do as a responsible party, all that changed when they changed the way it was zoned. So what you just did, no matter what, you want to always say that it's DEP and EPA that are responsible for the cleanup. Well, number one, EPA regulations are in jeopardy right now. Andrew Wheeler, who is also now in EPA, that used to be the position of the former EPA administrator, he has ties to DuPont. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. So when these people don't trust DEP and EPA and feel they can't depend on them to be the experts, they look at you as the people they elected to keep them safe. What you just did now, I hope you will undo, because not only is it these people my age, there's unborn children. We just lost another girl that I grew up with last week of cancer. And I keep hearing it. My husband, Mike, says to me, why is it in your town all these people are dying all the time? You can't clean it up to a lower standard if you care about your people. You may not serve when these people have to deal with it 20 years from now, but Love Canal is not the only one that had capping problems. There's plenty of people around here, sites that have had problems where it goes into the groundwater. This isn't about just soil contamination. There is groundwater issues, and you can clean it up. I've talked to experts out in California. One guy is a professor at UCLA. You can clean groundwater. Chemical oxidation, bioremediation. If you have to lift the homes to do it, you'll do it. But what you just did now is open the door to possibility of them never seeing that cleanup, that the best one out there that can be offered to them at this modern time. So they know how to clean groundwater. That's a fact. That was a lie.
So let's talk about the groundwater you just brought up. DuPont, EPA, DEP spend a lot of money looking in for research on how to clean it. If these organizations are telling me right now there is not a substantial way to clean a plume the size that we have here, then they are correct. There are ways to clean small areas of vapor intrusion. That we know for years, but that has not worked, and they've tried it. The remediation you just mentioned was going to be a pilot here, and the EPA decided, or the DEP, I don't remember which one, that it would not work here. So one of the things you brought up, they already said would not work here. They are still investigating the best way to treat that. Okay, at this moment, believe me, if there was a way to clean this up today, the EPA would be saying, clean it up this way right now. They would not be sitting back and saying, please. It's not about money. I am going to agree with what you guys say all the time. DuPont or Chemours can pay whatever needs to be done to make things happen here. If EPA says tomorrow, this is what you need to do, then they're going to have to pay it and do it. And we'll support that. We're not going to fight that. Okay, but we have to go. I know it's hard about this trusting, but We are not going to talk about cleanup. We can't. No one on this panel will be able to tell you what a cleanup is about, what a line should be, or where it should be capped or not capped. That's not our decision. Unfortunately or fortunately, it is the EPA's decision. That's the end of the discussion. It's what it is. I can't change that. Anyone else from the public? Please step up.
Jeff Rosa, 19 Laurel Avenue. I feel a little out of place because I have nothing to do
Okay.
about the zoning or anything like that.
Give me a little break.
Something that happened in my neighborhood just in the past week.
Could you say your address again?
19 Laurel Avenue, we're on the riverside of Laurel Avenue. At the end of my road, there's 4 lots, there were 4 houses, they were knocked down, whatever. A while back, a company started parking their vehicles on the property. So,
can I just stop you? You say a company, is it a neighbor or just a company?
well, the person across the street, their son's company.
Okay.
Not from our town.
Okay.
Was parking 2 trucks there.
Totally illegal.
And then parked a trailer and a vehicle and a cement mixer. I finally got fed up, so I called.
Good.
It took 3 days for them to get the 2 trucks off the lot, and it took till just yesterday to get...
Oh, you called the resident?
No, I called the police.
Police, okay.
And it just took them till yesterday to get the vehicle and the trailer and the ladders and whatever. The problem I have is they moved the trucks now into the neighbor's driveway. Now, I know that's illegal too, 10,000 pounds, I know they're over, I run a landscaping company, I know the trucks are over 10,000 pounds. The problem I'm having is the police have informed me that there is no ordinance. You can't park a mobile home on the streets, you can't park a trailer, you can't park a recreational vehicle. But you could park a commercial vehicle, as long as it's registered, you could be from any town, anywhere, and run your business out of the street.
Is it on today's agenda? Is it on today's agenda? No.
No.
We are in the process of changing.
Okay, because, I moved from Bloomfield to here because I wanted to get out of the commercial area, I wanted to come to residential. And it was unfortunate, I guess fortunate and unfortunate that the houses went down for the people. But when they went down and then these trucks came, and to be told that now I have to go back to, somebody could be running their business right out in front of my house. And I came here to ask that something be done
So
about
we
it.
are aware of that problem. That has been a glitch in our coding right now, so we are addressing that. There will be limits on how that works and and I will address your concerns. I also know our administrator today actually sent out an email to our police department asking to put up no parking signs on all the vacant lot areas down there, so no one will be allowed to park there, and there will be no warnings, they will be ticketed if they park.
Could I just follow up another thing about that? The curb cuts are there. So when I first moved here, the garbage trucks and everybody back down and then drive out. Now they're using the curb cuts, and there's so much dirt coming up in front of my house. I don't know whether that can be stopped. Because even UPS is using it, everybody's using it.
You mean to make the turn?
To make the turn. They go right to the lot.
The only way we're going to catch them is, our own trucks we can handle, but the other ones will be a little more difficult.
Okay. So if I went home tonight and called the police saying, you got to get these trucks out of here, if they put them in the street, I can't do anything about it.
Not yet, but very soon, as of maybe the next meeting, I think.
I don't know what that, I'm still waiting for information.
Okay, so in the next 2 months or 3 months, we will be addressing.
So I'm going to have to sit and look at this commercial, somebody from, again, it's not our town. They're from Totowa, and I know why they're
There's no
there.
restriction on that, right? That's where it's from.
They get ticketed in their town. So that's why they've come to our town.
Unfortunate. And the reason, I'll just tell you, the reason we are looking at this is because we had a situation that somebody had some big commercial trucks and was told he couldn't keep them on the side of his yard, so he went and parked them in front of a neighbor's house. And of course, the neighbor was very upset about that. And that's why we're addressing it.
Yeah, because I just don't want it to happen to anybody. Any of us shouldn't have to.
No, I agree.
Somebody could have their employees come park their cars in front of your house,
Sure.
take the trucks, go to work, come
And I don't even know if
7
we
days a week.
out of town. Can we address out of town?
The intent is to address the parking.
Right.
Vehicles anywhere in the...
Right, so that will be addressed, though.
Okay, but for now, if I call,
Unfortunately,
there's
no.
really nothing I can do.
Unless they're parked on the private property. If they're
They're
parked on...
gone now. They're moved
But if
to...
something is put on that private property, call the police, then they will be ticketed. And I will make sure we reach out to the police to ticket them, no warning, just right to a ticket.
Okay, very good, thank you.
And I give you credit for sitting through all this just to get your question out. That's impressive.
We're all in it together, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Please, start.
Ann Castanelli, 5 Lambert Street. you know, you sit here long enough and you can think of more stuff because it's bad. I just want to make a point, because I want it on record. The vote for the planning board on December 19th, whatever year it was, doesn't matter to me. All I want to say is, on December 19th, you post for a planning board vote, a public input vote, 6 days prior to Christmas, because everybody's looking at the newspaper, looking for that public notice to come up. Right then, to make a decision of this magnitude. Okay? I wonder how many people were at that meeting. I know you won't get me an answer. Doesn't matter. I made my point, right, guys? Okay. Number 2, just a little correction. The vapor intrusion doesn't include metals. You mentioned before...
No, it does not, that's right.
The vapor intrusion came from the TCE and PCE,
That's
which
correct.
are...
Correct.
Okay. They were the cleaning fluids that were used.
Correct.
And DuPont pays over $800,000, if I'm not mistaken, in taxes. That's
More.
not a small chunk.
More.
You mentioned $1 million. Okay. You mentioned $1 million that a new company would come in. You know, doesn't sound like all that much to me.
No, they would still pay their portion that's not built on.
800 plus the new company,
Right.
that might, whatever. I still don't agree with it, but that's irrelevant, obviously. Now, this is a total, other issue. What can be done about 18-wheelers driving down Wanacue Avenue, going way over a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit? People making U-turns in the middle of the street. A truck drove down the street, probably going 35, 40, knocked off a mirror of a truck parked on the street, and kept going, and I'm sitting there in the hair salon, looking out the window, having a cup of coffee, going, oh my God, that guy just ripped off that mirror and kept going. Here's the mirror laying in the street. These vehicles, big trucks, small trucks, cars, they're not heating a 20, and now we don't have our radar thing there anymore. I don't see those little things in the street, not that they did a whole lot, pedestrian crossing. Something's got to be done.
So let me address that a little bit, because we have concerns with that. And one of the things I just reached out to the administrator about is, first of all, I want to redo our crosswalks now again, so if you have to do them twice a year, we used to do them once a year, let's do them twice a year so they know there's a distinct crosswalk there when people are there. The second thing, remember, it's a county road, so any restrictions would have to be put on by the county. We can't put a restriction on the road.
No, but you can ask for them.
We can ask for them, and I have asked for them, and they ignored it, so they don't really put restrictions on roads, they tell me. The fact that the 18-wheel trucks, I don't really, is that something we can even address with the county?
County roads are normally roads that normally 18-wheelers would go on. That's county roads.
We constantly are on top of the chief, and we'll remind him that to keep doing the operations they do there about speeding, because you're not the only one complaining about speeding there, and I've seen it myself. I've seen people in crosswalks. I was going across the street, almost got hit by a car who didn't stop at the walk. So those kind of things we definitely have to address down there. But at the end of the day, it's a county road, so there's not much we can do. The sign that you're talking...
I'll make a call to the county.
Yeah, sure.
I'll make a complaint to
I
them,
think everybody
too.
should call the county, but,
I don't have a problem with
the other
that.
thing is, you mentioned is the sign that's being repaired right now, where are we with that speed sign? Remember you were talking with Dan?
By the library,
Yeah. We're working on getting that fixed, it broke and we're getting it fixed. So yeah, we're addressing it.
The battery's replaced, Mayor, and it wasn't charging, so they're looking into why it's not charging.
Okay. So they have to do something, either replace the sign or whatever. Okay. Anyone else from the public like to address? Step up.
Randy had 443 Montclair Avenue. About a month ago, I was talking about the OEM meeting that was on Channel 77, and what a good presentation that Al Evangelista was making on that OEM meeting. And that watching the meeting from home, and when he was pointing to the screen, you cannot see anything on the screen because it's just a white screen because the camera is inefficient. Has anything been done in the month to address that situation?
First of all, as you know, we're not required to put that on Channel 77. We do the best we can at the budget we have, but we are looking into some newer camera equipment to see if that would help with that. There's been discussions between the tech committee and Kevin about seeing what we can do about replacing some of the cameras to make that work. But it's a balance, because when you get closer, you're not going to be able to read the screen, I understand. Isn't that, someone was telling me you won't be able to read the screen.
First of all, it's important to understand that this system was never set up for beyond television.
Right.
It's set up for presentations here in the courtroom. Bottom line.
That's true.
That's the answer. If those cameras are getting changed, not going to change anything. These systems aren't made for that. There's no integration.
Right. So that is true. These systems were put in place for presentations from the groups.
Those TVs on that camera. Not going to happen.
Not ever.
Probably not, no.
Not ever. None.
Okay, but then...
Not if I spend more money on it. We're spending enough on the system. I think we're pretty much done. It was never meant for that purpose.
Okay. Channel 77 is Pompton Lake's channel. It shows these council meetings. This council itself, I remember Councilwoman Reichert had said one time about the OEM meeting and what a good meeting it was, and that the people at home should watch it. Well, how can they watch it if the screens are no?
We're not talking about watching the screen, we're talking about watching a presenter who's
But the presenter is presenting subjects that are on the screen.
All right, so then what we can do to address that is have our presenters not use the screens and use a board.
You're a tough crowd, I'll tell you something. And listen, on top of Channel 77, now, the website has been real good. You know, I mean, people who are computer literate can go and watch the council meetings on the website. It's great, I would say so. But not everybody's computer literate, like we said. And a lot of the seniors, I'm a senior, thank God, I've made it this far, we watch Channel 77. There is absolutely no oversight. I've called for the last few years about council meetings that weren't up. Liz, God bless her, she says, call Kevin. I call Kevin, Kevin says I don't watch the meeting. Well, who is watching the oversight on Channel 7?
All right, I'm going to say this one more time, because this has come up numerous times. We are doing this as a service to help. This is not, hold on, let me finish now. We are not doing this as we hired someone to charge more money, to raise our taxes, to run a program. What you're asking for is someone to run the systems. Right now, we don't have someone here full-time doing that. Liz does most of the work of putting it up. How it runs and how it works, we call people in on an hourly basis to make it work. They're not here all the time. So if there's a problem with that system, they're not going to be on top of it until the next time they come in. This is a service. Is it 100%? Probably not. Okay? Could it get better with a little more money? Probably. Do we want to spend that money right now? No. Going back to all our concerns with budgets and things, we have other things to spend money on than worrying about if our meetings are being presented the right way every time.
Well, but this is an information service for your taxpayers.
It is.
Do it correctly.
In my opinion, every time I turn on, I have no problem with it. I see everything I need to see on, and I do watch it.
I've recorded it. On the 30th of April, the meeting came on at 5 in the morning. There was no other meeting until 11 a.m. that day. That was 6 hours, no meeting.
Was there other programming on?
No, it was just
Okay, but
and on top of that, we've mentioned plenty of times, the Our Hometown is a great show. Shows Pompton Lakes in the 1950s. There's no schedule for that. When the schedule did come on, it was only on once in an hour-long period for 18 seconds.
So it was on.
Well, how can you figure out what shows you're going to watch or when you're going to watch it?
If you're that concerned about watching it, I will tell you this.
For your taxpayers.
I can tell you it's not thrilling to watch it, but if you are that concerned to watch it, you can always go to
There's a lot of people I talk to all the time.
You can always go to our public library. They'll work you through the system and turn it on.
Do it correctly.
I think it is working the way it should. Could it be better? Probably.
A lot better.
But at this moment, we're getting the meetings on, and there's people in this room that remember years ago that we didn't even have things up and running on the system, and there was times that we'd go by weeks and months that nothing was on there. So we're much better than we were 10 or 12 years ago. These monitors, Kevin is correct, we put in place for the meetings, not for people to see what's going on from the Channel 77. Channel 77 had nothing to do with these monitors. They were put for presentations from the planning board, the zoning board, and us to the public. That's
But
what
people still do watch these meetings on
Sure,
Channel 7.
and I think, in my
They do
opinion-
watch Mr. Evangelista's presentation of the OEM, which was excellent. But when he's pointing to the screen, there's no point in having the screen on.
And we're taking that point, and we'll work with that point, yes. That point we will work with.
Well, I thought he wasn't gonna work on it.
No. I said we will put it on boards now instead of the screens. Please listen if you're going to make a comment.
Let me just make another comment before you commit people to putting things on screens.
Thank you.
Teaching at a university, a lot of people use the screens. They use the PowerPoints, and there are all sorts of tools that people choose to use or not use. If it is a meeting, for instance, I sit on the redevelopment agency. Redevelopment agency is not recorded, but redevelopment agency takes tremendous use and advantage of these new screens, because instead of sitting there with all the big architecturals, it is very, very handy for us to have the screens. Okay. However, occasionally we have something like the OEM presentation that Al Evangelista makes. When we're having this situation that the public cannot see as well as we would like them to see, what we need to try to do is just make our speakers aware of the fact, so that in the event that they are referring to a PowerPoint slide, and they, instead of going like this, they say what is on the slide, they stop themselves. That's a method of doing it. And just to try, and it sometimes takes a little bit of training and reminding, but it is a method that can be used so that they're not constantly turning to a screen you can't see and just say, the slide says X, Y, Z, and then make your comment about it. So I don't know that we want to commit ourselves to boards when we have this. We just need to prompt some of our speakers, and the speakers will tell you whether they're comfortable doing that or whether they do need the boards. So,
Yeah, because you've had drug awareness here during the presentation. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is, this is an information for your taxpayers. And thank you very much, Councilwoman Riker, for your explanation. But then to your speakers, you're going to have to explain that, so that the public at home can understand what's going on at the
it's
meeting.
not going to be perfect, but if they're at least if it's brought to their attention, and they do have the benefit of the people who are here to use the screens, that we make them aware, and they will try to at least say what is on the slide as they explain it, as opposed to just pointing to it.
Correct. Thank you.
And I think that was stated right from the beginning, that we would work with the presenters to make that happen. We're not going to change the system, though, is what I think what you're asking.
Please don't say all the time, if you want your taxes to go up. We constantly say that all the time on these issues. A bucket truck I wanted, oh, your taxes will go up. Every time you say
But it's
your
true.
taxes.
It's not a lie.
Our taxes go up anyway.
Well, you want them to go up more?
No.
Okay.
Better service.
So what you're asking for is spending. Let's spend it.
Come on.
All right, anybody else from the public like to address?
Yeah, this is...
Hi, Peter Shazad, 14 Warborn Avenue. Actually, just to follow up on that, I watch a lot of MIT lectures, and I think actually for not a lot of expense, you can actually get an AV switch box that would be able to add the feed from the TV to the recording of video. And you can even just leave the box, leave it back there, over there, I don't know where it would be, but anytime a presenter was speaking and was then going to start referring to an online deck, you can just go boom, and you would get a 2/3 split.
And I think part of the problem, though, is there's many steps to the uploading and downloading through the high school and through here to get it onto Channel 77.
But it would be real time during the recording process.
I don't know, is that something?
So that wouldn't change any of the back ends.
Okay.
To answer that question, it doesn't work that way. I talked to the company that installed the recording system and the actual video system.
Right.
Doesn't work that way. The system's not compatible.
They said there's no way of combining.
No. The gentleman's been since 30 years. It would have to be a whole new system. I asked that question. He's tried to actually, one couple meetings, we tried to have it where this camera was videoing that particular screen and having a small box on the side of the picture.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing to get from that camera.
Sure.
And he already told me that can't work that way, because we have a recording system that is proprietary relative to meetings, and it takes the video, but it doesn't allow you to be able to break in to split the feed, because it's an AOC recording system for most of the courts. It has to be secure, so we can't do any of that. He made that clear to me.
Oh, due to security purposes, it was set up in a particular way, is that what you're saying?
That's how it's provided. Okay. So we can't get into that system that way.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public would like to address? Please step up.
Josie Brown, 46 Van Ness Avenue. I'm going to talk about something completely different, a traffic issue.
Okay.
And I don't come to many meetings, but I do want to mention this. The corner of Riverview Road and Hamburg Turnpike, where George's Market is on the corner, people, as hard as it is, people insist on making left-hand turns there. It not only causes accidents, but when I go to work in the morning, I go and I make a right onto Hamburg Turnpike. The traffic is all the way back to Lincoln Avenue from someone wanting to make a left-hand turn. Now, Hamburg Turnpike, I'm sure, is a Passaic County road. Is Riverview?
Riverview is not.
No.
But if we're going to put any kind of light there, it would have to be on Hamburg.
No, I'm not asking for a light, I'm asking for no left-hand turn.
Yeah, but that would be onto a county road, so they would have to approve that. We can ask.
Because I've been living there since 1985, and it's just getting worse and worse.
And I agree with you. It is
And you know
hard.
who does it a lot is our sanitation trucks. They make left-hand turns there all the
That's where
time.
they're coming from.
Yeah, because the other way is you're into Wayne. I was going to say in my report, I did have a meeting with the county too, so those are the kind of things I can bring up and discuss with the engineers and see if it's something we can work out.
Yeah.
Because Hamburg Turnpike is a very busy road, and we're trying, to look at, and the county is too, to slow down accidents that are going on that road, so it might be something you're interested in, so I'll bring it up to them.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to address us? Seeing no one, can I have a motion to close the public session? Second. Council President Riker, Councilman Giaconetti, all in favor? Aye. Against? Wow, we're only up to bills and claims. Motion to approve minutes. Motion to approve the following minutes, regular meeting minutes of April 24th, 2019. Council President Riker?
Second.
Councilwoman Palladori, all in favor? Aye. Against? Authorizing bills and claims, motion to approve the following bills as listed below.
So moved.
Councilman Begg?
Second.
Councilman Bennett, all in favor? Aye. Against? Consent agenda whenever you're ready. Anybody want to pull? No.
Whereas the mayor and council of the borough of Pompton Lakes have reviewed the consent agenda consisting of various proposed resolutions, whereas the mayor and council of the borough of Pompton Lakes does not desire to remove resolutions for individual actions from that agenda. Now therefore be it resolved, the following resolutions on the consent agenda are hereby approved. Resolution 104, 105, and 107.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Councilman Giaconetti, Councilman Bennett, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Separate action.
Resolution 19-106, authorizing the issuance and not exceeding $2,520,000 bond anticipation note to the Borough of Pompton Lakes in the County of Passaic, New Jersey.
Motion to approve resolution 19-106.
So moved.
Councilman Begg?
Second.
Councilman Giaconetti, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Roll call.
I need a roll call.
Roll call, yes.
Okay. Councilman Gray?
Yes.
Councilman Giaconetti?
Yes.
Councilwoman Polidori?
Yes.
Councilman Riker?
Yes.
Councilman Bennett?
Yes.
We move to ordinances?
Yes, please.
Ordinance for first reading and introduction, final adoption on May 22nd. Ordinance 19-17, an ordinance amending section 4-1.8, other boards, agencies, and commissions.
Motion to open the meeting for public comments on ordinance 19, explanation.
Well, 1917 is the first.
No, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one.
First reading.
First reading, Ken.
The purpose of this ordinance is to codify the zoning permit applications which the borough collects, but which were omitted from the codification of the borough code.
Okay. Motion to approve ordinance 1917 for introduction.
So moved.
Councilman Giaconetti?
Second.
Council President Riker, roll call, please.
Councilman Day?
Yes.
Councilman Giaconetti?
Yes.
Councilwoman Polidori?
Yes.
Councilman Riker?
Yes.
Councilman Bennett?
Yes.
Second reading, we're going to go to 1915.
Ordinance 19-15 for second reading. This has been posted on the municipal bulletin board and advertised. An ordinance amending section 8-2, chapter 8, noise of the Borough Administrative Code.
You want to say something about it, or?
Sure. This is a noise ordinance, which will codify the requirements for noise control in the borough. It has already been approved by the Department of Environmental Protection Noise Division, and it complies with the
State
format for noise ordinances in the state.
And this is just, we had some changes from the last time we had this in, right?
This is
Same one?
This is second reading.
Second reading, okay. Okay, motion to open the meeting for public comments on ordinance 19-13. Council President Riker?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, 15. I'm old. It's been a long day. 15. Who's second? Councilman Bay? All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Anyone from the public like to address just this ordinance? Seeing no one, can I have a motion to close the meeting for public comments on ordinance 19-15?
So moved.
Councilwoman Polidori? Councilman Giaconetti? All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Oh, roll call. You should always take that off, then, to get to it.
Councilman Day?
Yes.
Councilman Giaconetti?
Yes.
Councilwoman Polidori?
Yes.
Councilman Riker?
Yes.
Councilman Bennett?
Yes. Ordinance 1916.
An ordinance amending section 2-56, open space, parkland, and recreational facilities advisory committee.
This ordinance was requested by the Open Space Committee. It revises the membership and breaks it into two different types of members, regular members and ex officio members, and establishes a new level of membership for a quorum.
Can I have a motion to open the meeting for public comments on ordinance 19-16? So moved. Councilman Bennett?
Second.
Councilman Giaconetti? All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Anyone like to address this ordinance? Please step up.
Peter Cesar, 214 Avenue. Just adding members, adding a new category so there's new members, so it raise the level of people needed at the meeting to make a quorum.
No, contrary.
Is it reducing people?
Needed to make a quorum.
So we're still giving people the voting option of people who are not within the initial committee? If they show, there's a certain number of meetings they have to show up, I think, is that correct?
No. It creates two levels of membership, regular members, of which there are 7. A quorum is a majority of regular members. It creates a second type of membership called ex officio members who have the right to vote and to participate, so long as they either attend or listen to the meeting minutes for the issues that are being addressed.
And the reason we did that is because we wanted some of our boards, like Shade Tree and Environmental, we wanted them to be part of the decisions, but sometimes we don't have a quorum because the number was too big initially. So we didn't have the number, so sometimes they would try to vote on things and we couldn't vote legally on it. So this way we'll get the quorum, they still get a vote, but we still have the lower number in case we have enough people there.
Okay. I'm sorry, was this first or second reading for this?
Second.
Okay.
Okay, that's it. Anyone else? Seeing no one, can I have a motion to close the meeting for public comments on ordinance 19-16? Council President Riker?
Second.
Councilman Day? Roll call, please. Motion to approve ordinance 1916 for final adoption.
So moved.
You don't have a motion?
I did. Councilman Giaconetti? And second?
I'll second.
Council President Riker? Roll call, please.
Councilman Day?
Yes.
Councilman Giaconetti?
Yes.
Councilwoman Polidori?
Yes.
Councilwoman Riker?
Yes.
And Councilman Bennett?
Yes.
Okay, on the reports, let's try to keep our reports short if we can. Motion to appoint Catherine Cole as member of the Flood Advisory Board to fill an expired term 12/31/20. I made a motion, can I have a second?
Second.
Councilman Bennett, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? I can't think of anybody better to be on our Flood Advisory Board than Catherine Cole. She's put a lot of time and energy before she was involved on that, and I think she'll do a great job on the Flood Advisory Board. She'll fit right in there, so thank you for all her help with doing that. Under my report, real quick, like I said, I was invited to a Passaic County Mayor's meeting with the governor. There was maybe 5 or 6 mayors there. The question I asked them, one of his peers of the budget that he's presenting this year is transportation, and he feels that moving forward, a lot of young adults will be commuting back and forth to work through mass transit and not be using cars, and maybe using Uber or things like that, and not be owning cars. So my question to the governor was, it sounds like a great idea, a great plan, but Passaic County does not have any trains in reach of all these commuters. Bergen County does, and Morris County does. So if one of the pillars of your plan is to get people to use trains, where are we with getting trains to Passaic County? He actually said it was a good idea, it was a good question, he did not have an answer, but when you look at it realistically, we do need a train that would hook us up to Bergen County, and to, once a train comes into a community, it makes a big difference. At least it's on the radar. Of course, the governor's telling me they're all crying that they're broke at New Jersey Transit, and that's why they can't do anything, but the governor did believes in it, so with his push, and maybe with a little push from our congressional help, we can start talking about trains again. We had talked about it a couple years ago, and then it went away. We also talked a lot about the taxes in Passaic County that are too high, in a general sense. Someone spoke about it. It's not just Pompton Lakes. Passaic County is very high. The governor addressed his way of fixing that, which I don't know if it's good or bad, but his way is giving more money in school funding to the schools. Therefore, they won't be asking for more money from us for our taxes. And it sounds like a good idea, but I'm a little nervous in the fact that who stops the schools from spending that money and then still asking us for the same money they had? So if they want to build bigger and better things in their schools, they're still going to ask us for the same money. So one of the mayors, and it was a good question, asked the governor, why not give it directly to the residents instead of going through the schools to come around? He felt he was doing that with homestead rebate, and he's going to increase that. So at least they're talking about taxes. One of the things that caught me off guard, and I wasn't happy to hear that, one of the mayors said, what do you consider middle class? Because he's trying to help the middle class. He said up in North Jersey, the middle class could be different from South Jersey. So he came up with a number, and when he said the number, I almost fell off my chair, and I actually made a comment. He said, anybody making less than $1 million is middle class. I said, well, welcome to Pompton Lakes, because we have a lot of middle class in Pompton Lakes. I think that's an unrealistic goal to say under $1 million is middle class. If you're making $900,000, I don't think you're considered middle class. But in their eyes, they are. So that's something they maybe need to work with a little bit. Like I said, but it was a good meeting, and I thank him for taking the meeting. And like I said, he did come out to me and reach out to me about trying to talk about DuPont. So he's showing an interest in our small little town here, which is good to see. So I appreciate that. They also met, like I said, with the commissioner. We're setting up a meeting in 2 weeks, the 29th, I think it's 2 weeks. It's a Wednesday. We don't have a time yet. There'll be invited guests from both sides who want to discuss it. She will probably give an update and hopefully take questions, and her people that work with her will be there. One of the questions I will be asking is, we were promised a representative from the DEP here at least monthly. We haven't seen that person yet. When the council president and I met with her about a month ago, she actually said, because of budget restraints, we can't do that, but in this case, I want somebody there, and I haven't seen that yet, so hopefully that will happen. What else do I have? I attended with Council President Riker a Realtors luncheon that was discussing the concerns every mayor, there was a couple mayors there from different towns, had with the real estates, and one of the things I learned, which is caught me off guard actually, was now with the MLS listings, your house no longer has to be listed in a flood zone. There used to be a little box you check yes or no in a flood zone. It no longer, this has been a while, I understand, it doesn't have to be listed there. So the question I had was, if I buy a home cash in a flood zone, and then the homeowner comes to me and says, is your house in a flood zone, do you need flood insurance? He bought it cash. He says, no, I don't need flood insurance. Then this gentleman or person buys the house from him cash. He doesn't think he needs flood insurance, and then he floods the next day from a storm. he's going to be very upset, and he's going to come to the town, and there's no checkpoint there that, it seems to me, with the real estate agent, to let them know, hey, look, this house is in a flood zone. So that's one of the concerns I have, especially for Pompton Lakes. That happens quite often. You have some young people who maybe are not as knowledgeable about buying a home. They go to a guy who's trying to flip a house. He bought it cheap. He fixed it up real quick. He bought it cash. They walk in and say, how much is this house? Here's the cash. He buys it. Are you in a flood zone? No, I don't need flood insurance. So they don't think they're in a flood zone. And then the next day, they flood. So that's something I think they need to work on, and they said they would look into that. And finally, we had a stigma walk with the high school that put on the FBOA. They did a walk. Some of the members in the audience were there, and I know most of the council was there. It was a nice program. It was nice to see that they're taking the ball over at the high school now with the kids to identify stigma-free. And if you're not familiar with stigma-free, that's making an awareness of mental illness and not to be afraid of saying, I have some issues or I have some concerns, and getting the help that you need. So we've taken it upon ourselves, like a lot of towns, to become a stigma-free community. But if you saw the boys lacrosse team all wore their shirts from stigma-free when they were playing on Sunday. So it's catching on in a typical fashion in Pompton Lakes. Even our high school kids jump into the program, which is great to see. So that's a nice thing to see. And that is my report. Council President Ricker.
Okay. Before and I will go through these things quickly, I just want to make a comment about ordinance 1913. The mayor obviously answered lots of questions. You heard several remarks from other council people. I did not say anything during the back and forth today. But what I do want to say is, and I guess I speak for myself, but the mayor said this many times of all of us, this was clearly a difficult ordinance. It was clearly a difficult decision. We not only listened to those who took the time and energy to come here to the meetings, but we also listened to others and spoke to others. And frankly, as duly elected representatives, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the entire community. And taking that fiduciary responsibility to the entire community, not addressing all the issues that were raised this evening, I fully support the action that we took this evening. On some other things, the mayor mentioned that we went to a realtors meeting. The redevelopment that he mentioned earlier from the dais, we learned about that from other mayors and business administrators that attended. He and I have gone to that meeting many times, and quite frankly, it's one of the things I enjoy going to the most. We meet, generally speaking, with mayors from the other towns. There is absolutely no reference to what party you represent or are elected from. And there's a sense of community and shared information in terms of shared benefits and shared burdens. And the burden that seems to be universal in the communities is the opioid crisis. And I think the extent of it first was brought to my attention in one of these earlier meetings. And we also did learn something that I think there's going to be a group going forward with the one that...
I called from the mayor of Wayne yesterday. We're setting up.
That, there are some joint actions that come out of these meetings, and I think Chris Bergano of Wayne is going to spearhead that, and we're going to try to join with him on some of this opioid issues. I want to acknowledge the women's club. There are very few of the women's club members sitting left in the audience at this time, but I do want to publicly thank them and acknowledge what they do for the community. As for CASA, CASA's court-appointed special advocate, which you heard, and we did have the representative from Passaic County, but CASA is is a national organization. And quite frankly, it started in the 80s, and I was involved in it back in the 80s when it was a pilot program, and quite frankly, it's really heartwarming to see how it's just grown and has become such a part of the fabric in the court system. And if for some reason anyone has some some extra time. It is really a very worthwhile cause. I just want to make a comment on May being Mental Health Month. On our consent agenda, we acknowledge that. We had our walk on Saturday through town, and I'm proud of us as a community dealing with this, and I just thought this is another publication that I get, just acknowledging from different perspective, stigma is the enemy, acknowledging that that May is Mental Health Month, and any things that communities can do to raise awareness is really critical. One of the things that is available to our community that we just saw in our correspondence is that we, in conjunction with Atlantic Health, are going to be doing mental health first aid training. It's going to be free. If you're seeking certification, you must do both. Both of the two are June 11th, June 18th. It's from 8:30 to 12:30 right here in our Civic Center, and it is being run by the Atlantic Health, the Chilton Healthcare Educator, if you're interested in that, just so that it's not that May is over and we forget about it. We really put our money where, put some of these comments into deeds. In terms of what's going on downtown, a lot of us up here participate in the ribbon cutting at the Cardinal Cafe. It's wonderful to see a successful community business thriving and growing and improving, and also we had bid buck sale. The thing I wanted to mention publicly is when I was standing online to buy my bid bucks, I was just chatting with the people around me, and they weren't people from town. And I asked them, how did you hear about it? So she said, well, I grew up in town, but I didn't know whether I was allowed to buy them now that I don't live here. Which struck me as really quite interesting, because the bid is going to such great lengths to reach out to the people who live in Wayne, in Wanacue, and Bloomingdale, because they want to bring them into town to help them, encourage them to buy things in our stores and go to our restaurants. So I'm saying this publicly, so if you have friends from those communities, please let them know. We would love them to stand online with us at those bid buck sales, and I'll bring it up again at the upcoming bid meeting, that we need to get that message out, that they don't have to sort of sneak in line and say, well, I'm not from Pompton Lakes, but I want the special bid buck sales. There is another event coming up that's very popular, and that's that Shred Day. So that we've done that in the past, and it was very popular, and I just want people to realize, because it might take you a while to get your documents together, and that's June 1st from 9 to 12 in the Pond Hole. And Mayor, the last thing is I would just want to wish everyone a happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Who's next? Councilwoman Colbert.
Thank you. I do want to also start off by making some comments about the vote that we had this evening. I did spend countless hours speaking to residents, local realtors, member of the EPA, representative from Comores. I listened to the comments that were made here in public comment. I read a lot of the comments that were on social media, and I did think long and hard about this. Just to echo Terry's comments, it wasn't a decision that was made lightly, but in the end, I did make the decision that I felt was best for the town. So I am comfortable with that also. I also attended the grand reopening ribbon cutting for Cardinal, so it was very nice to see Gladys Wood surrounded by friends and family, and to listen to her thank us and the community for the countless years that she's been here, and it is an institution in this town, so it's very nice to see them here, and I look forward to many lunches and now dinners there as well. I also participated in the Stigma Free Walk. I was very happy to see the turnout. I always comment on the events that we have in town. The one thing that impresses me the most is that whether we're just coming out to celebrate something fun, or if we're getting together to support a cause, the one thing this community always does is come together. So it was very nice to see such a large group of people participate in that walk that afternoon. And lastly, I will keep it short tonight, but I did have one other event or something that we had put together in conjunction with NJ Forestry, they have a program for third graders in the schools where each third grader is entitled to a free tree. So myself and Shade Tree Commissioner Randy, over the course of 2 days during the week of Arbor Day, went to visit our local middle schools and, our local elementary schools and spoke with the kids in third grade. I was able to share some information with them about Arbor Day, what Arbor Day represents, how it was started, and then Commissioner Hinton was able to talk to the kids about how to plant their trees, how to care for their trees, why trees are important. It was very interesting to sit there and listen to the kids talk about what they think trees mean in our community and to listen to the names that they were going to give their trees. But we also used it as an opportunity to remind the third graders that just a few days, or the council meeting before that, the fifth graders were invited in to share their essays, and there were some essay winners for Arbor Day. So we told the kids to make sure that they go home and they plant their trees, and over the next 2 years, they watch them grow and they take care of them so that when they come back here in 2 years, as they're writing their essays, we can hear how those trees have done and fared over time. So it was interesting for them to be engaged in that and to have something to look forward to. So I do thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And that is it.
Thank you. Just to follow up, we were talking about trees. I did get some nice comments about all the trees we are planting down all over the area. And if you've been on Facebook, you would have noticed some of those trees that came down were probably dangerous at some point because they were hollow. And so, that's another part of the shade tree, to identify trees that are a danger to the public, especially in a park like Hirschfield Park, and get them out and then put in new flowering trees that people are excited to see. So I did get some nice comments about that. Councilman Bennett.
Thank you, Mayor. Regarding the opioid issue, I will be attending the 19th Annual Addiction Conference on Friday for the New Jersey Prevention Network to hopefully bring back information to help stem the tide of this opioid issue. I also participated in the Stigma-Free Walk on Saturday. About 3 miles, wasn't it, Frank? 3 laps.
Way too long.
A couple of you guys didn't make it past 1 lap.
That's right.
Frank and I stuck it through.
We suck it through all the way to the end. That's right.
I'd like to thank the Shade Tree Commission. You guys coordinated the installation of the trees in the south end. They look beautiful. I actually got one on my property. So, the good, it looks beautiful. You guys did a great job. The bad, took me a year to get that tree, Randy. I'm kidding. Lastly, I just want to address Resolution 19-105. The NFIP, National Flood Insurance Program, has been insolvent for many years, and this resolution that was passed tonight, I should have brought it aside for separate action to comment. This resolution will bring attention to the fact that it's been insolvent for many years, and hopes that the legislators at the state and federal level will help to get this thing fixed.
And that came up in great length at our Realtors meeting, because they know it's going to affect people buying homes, especially first-time home buyers, if their rates go up and they can't afford to pay the flood insurance anymore on the house. So, one of the things they're looking on, they're, as a group themselves, they're writing to the people they have connections with to fight it also. So I think, for our community having flood issues also, it is a big deal, because the increases could be huge to people who have flood insurance if they don't repass it. So hopefully they do the right thing and get some money to fund that program and keep the numbers down a little bit.
Mayor, I did, apropos of our Realtor meeting, they did also deal with some small grants that may be available to us. So I sent emails to Eck and to Eric, because there was they gave information that perhaps they might be able to give us some upgrades on our trails. So this Realtor meeting seems to always be filled with lots of info, so I'll fill you in on that.
Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you. Councilman Begg.
Indeed. I received the Pompton Lakes Riverdale First Aid Squad report for the month of April 2019 from Chief Sean Filippi. There were 103 calls for service for the month of April. There were 53 in Pompton Lakes, 27 in Riverdale, 6 duty calls in Wanacue. There were 63 medical emergency calls, 20 trauma injury calls, 2 CPR calls, 3 motor vehicle accident calls, and 9 fire calls. I received the Pompton Lakes Fire Department report for the month of April from Fire Prevention Chief Al Bruno. He reported there were 18 alarms in April and a total of 102 alarms so far for the year. I attended the kickoff of the Cecil B. DeMille Summer 2019 Film Festival, sponsored by the Friends of the Pompton Lakes Library. The Friends will be showing 4 Cecil B. DeMille films in June and July at Christ Episcopal Church on Roundville Avenue. The dates are June 11th and 25th, July 2nd and 16th. Tickets can be purchased at the library for $5. Cecil B. DeMille has roots in Pompton Lakes. His family lived here for a period of time. His mother ran a dance studio here, and they belong to the Christ Episcopal Church, and it's a kickoff, and I hope people can attend the festival. I attended the Pompton Lakes Board of Education meeting on May 7th. The board approved the 2019-2020 budget of $35,206,032 at the meeting. The school tax on the average assessed home is $5,761, an increase of 1.77%. The budget includes the following facilities projects: repaving of the Lennox School playground, the upgrade of the Lakeside School Library, renovation of the Pompton Lakes High School Library, continuation of security upgrades and enhancements, and completion of the Lakeside School athletic field. Board honored longtime member Tim Trost for his service to the board and the community. And when he was leaving the board, and he received a plaque from him, and they swore in his replacement, John Yo. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I would like to say is, this whole council, when considering this ordinance that we passed tonight, really took a lot of time to speak with the EPA, and in some cases the DEP, on this. I know I spent a lot of time on there, and I know the mayor was at the last Thursday's meeting that we had with them, and I understand the problems there. I lived in that plume. My family, as I said before, my son just bought a house in the plume. We're aware of the problems that could be caused by that, and we'll be watchful as to what the EPA does to clean up that problem. That's my report.
Thank you. One thing I forgot to mention in my report, the addling of eggs has finished this year, and a big thank you to Kevin McGrath, who took over the program. But I have heard from a lot of residents that said they see a lot less deer in town, and that's because we've been doing this program probably 10 or 12 years. I'm sorry, not deer. I'm sorry. I made Randy very happy on that. I'm sorry, geese. That'll be our next addling program, the deer. So there has been a huge decrease of geese in town, and other towns now are asking us what we've been doing. But we've been doing that program for over 10 years. So that's a lot of eggs that we've been addling. And I'm just going to read an email I got from Kevin, who runs the program for us. Team Popoff had 9 eggs, 2 nests. Donkos had 5 nests, 23 eggs. Team Russo had 7 nests, 37 eggs. Team Hinton, Sarah, and McNamara had 13 nests at 50 eggs, for a total of 119 eggs that we added. That is a very low number for us normally. Normally we were in the 200s. So that shows it's working. I know some people don't want to hear it, but the geese are a real problem here in town, for a lot of different reasons, health reasons being one of them. And just so everyone understands, the reason the McNamara started this program years ago was because their older son was playing soccer at Lakeside Field, and he had an open sore on his leg from a little cut, and he slid and got a very, very serious infection from the goose, from the geese feces, and it was very serious for a very long time. And they started this program here in town because they were so concerned about moving forward with this. And they stepped down as chairperson after 10 years, but he's still involved in going out with us. So I thank everyone who's involved in that program. It's a little dangerous, so if you're looking for a little fun and a little danger, come join us, and we'll get you hooked up. You got to take a little class, and then you're good to go. Councilman Giaconetti.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to everybody doing the ad on the names, even Team Hinton. Must be some team with you, Mayor, and Randy, and
Oh, boy.
maybe I'd like to join you that year. I bet you it'll be a lot of fun, so, but again, thank you, Randy, everybody doing that. It definitely has worked, and, kudos to you guys. I did attend also the grand opening in the Cardinal Cafe. I wish Manny and Gladys and their son much luck and success over there at the new place. It looks very nice. It was a great grand opening. Couldn't stay long, but at least we made it. Was able to get to the bid bucks, and by the time I got there after the stigma-free march, it was still pretty packed. It was a line down the street still. So it looked like it was very successful. We were able to get the bid bucks. Also wanted to thank, as the rest of the council, Randy and the rest of the Shade Tree Commission on a wonderful job getting all the trees planted. It was a lot of work, and I know they worked tirelessly, the whole board. Also, kudos to getting the trees, as the mayor spoke about. If you're seeing posted on Facebook on the Shade Tree Commission page. And by the way, if you on Facebook, please like that page. I'm trying to get more people to like that page and put it out there. See how those trees were hollow. I mean, it was barely anything holding up. I don't know how those trees stayed up.
And the big trees.
Right, exactly, how dangerous it was by Hirschfield Merrin Park over there. So kudos to Randy and them going out there and tagging those trees and having taking them down before, God forbid, something did happen. And everything looks great. Ex-house came out really nice, looks good. So thank you for an excellent job, always. The other thing I have is the Board of Health, as mentioned before, attended that, but the one thing that did come out of that is the training. The councilwoman did mention before, June 11th and 18th is available for us too. If the mayor and council wanted to go, or Kevin, that was expected to trek up, or, it's actually during the day, so if you wanted to come, but it's available for all of us too. More than happy to train us if they wanted to, so please attend. Did attend the stigma-free march with everybody here, and a lot of people in the audience. Kudos to the FBLA, the Board of Health, Board of Education rather, the high school, the teachers, staff, the students. They all did a wonderful job, and it was a great event. Thank you to the police department blocking out the road all for us. It was good to see everybody out there. It was wonderful. The last thing I have is just to a little bit of notice, people that live by DuPont, off of Colfax, that area. Starting next week, the railroad tracks on Schuyler Ave. So 7 a.m. Monday, this coming Monday, all right, it is, let's make sure, this coming Monday, whatever May it is. 13th, thank you. May 13th, 7 a.m. for the week, all the way till 7 p.m. on that Friday, May 17th. That Ave is going to be closed, it's going to be detoured around. So if you cut through there, just a reminder, I know they put it on Facebook, it's been out there, but if you see it, it's just for the week, they're redoing the railroad crossings there, so hopefully it won't be too bad, so.
Well, it will be, because they're going to be closing down the bridge, Lakeside Bridge also.
The one at the same time, yeah?
Unfortunately, it looks like it could be very close to the same time. So just stay away from that area for the next week or two, because the bridge, initially they told us they're not going to close the bridge, but now they're telling me they are going to close the bridge. And obviously, we all know that's a long way around. If you get down there, you got to go back around. So just stay away from that area for the next week.
All right, thank you, Mayor, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Professional reports. No report. Administrative report.
Well, between you and Frank, you took two of my big items off my list already.
You're welcome.
I was going to talk about the railroad crossing on Lakeside Bridge, but to confirm that the Lakeside Bridge will be closed from May 16th to June 6th.
It'll be closed both ways?
What?
I thought they were going to try to leave one lane open.
Completely closed.
Complete?
From when again, to say that again?
May 16th to
May
June
16th to June 6th, all right.
What happened was is that upon follow-up inspection, the bridge is just that bad.
Yeah.
They really can't try to do one at a time. You really can't get in there and quickly move the deck and redo the deck. So it's a problem bridge, and I have to fix that. So it's going to be a little 3-week period, going to be definitely closed to all vehicle traffic. So that was a couple other things. Our click and ticket application was denied due to there's only so many applications, so much funding, and we received the funding. The other thing, last big thing was DOT awarded us the grant to do Colfax Ave Phase 1 for $225,000. That will be done next year and designed over the winter. We're doing Montclair
All
Ave
right,
this
can we
year.
just talk about Colfax Avenue, because I do get a lot of questions about Colfax Avenue. The county is gonna go in...
Well,
Go ahead.
take away my thunder.
Okay, go for it, go for it.
Yeah, the county bid for Colfax Ave is going to be received on May 28th. They're going to be repaving from Wanacue to Jefferson
Now,
this year. That's right.
And we're gonna start next year,
And we're going to do our sections next year.
Jefferson to the,
Right.
Oakland border, next year.
Yep.
but we will be fixing any potholes meanwhile on that
That's a
road.
whole different story. I'm talking about,
There is quite a bit past Jefferson.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I get a lot of calls about that.
There is a lot, yeah.
You'll be doing that in 2 phases, Kevin?
excuse me?
Colfax Ave in 2 phases?
I believe we'll be 2 phases.
Thank you, Kevin.
That's
it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, you took all my thunder away.
Any questions for the administrator?
No, thank you.
No, okay. Motion to open the meeting for public comments. Council
Second.
President Riker, Councilman Giaconetti, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Anyone from the public like to address? I see your hand, please step up.
Down 5 Lambert Street. Speaking of that bridge, I wonder if those DuPont trucks going over it so many times that while they were cleaning up the lake had anything to do with all that bad damage to it.
Should ask the county.
Good question, huh? When you went to this realtors meeting and people are buying these homes and possibly not disclose, that they're not being told about the flood, first of all, a listing agent should absolutely know the property they're listing. You don't list the property without finding out as many details as you possibly can. If your seller doesn't tell you, and you happen to know, that does not let you off the hook of telling the buyer what you know, okay? They first should disclose it, the seller. But you as the agent have to know what you're selling, so therefore you then also have to disclose it. A flipper, a builder who flips, he's also right along with a realtor that can be sued if they don't disclose information that's pertinent to that property.
So if someone asks, do you have flood insurance, does he have to say, yes, I'm in a flood zone, or he just says, no, I don't have flood insurance? See, that's the question.
It is 2 separate questions. But if you pay cash for a home,
Right.
there is no mandatory
Right.
flood premium that you have to pay.
Right.
Are you foolish for not paying flood insurance? Sure. Because that means when you get flooded, you're not going to get covered for what you lost. So it doesn't make any sense why you wouldn't, but you don't have to.
But how would the buyer know is the question?
Okay, so the seller should absolutely disclose, I'm living in a flood zone.
But they don't.
I happen to have paid cash for the property, I don't personally have to have it, okay?
Right.
Now typically, you're gonna go through a realtor. It's likely that you could buy a home right from the builder. Most of the time, that builder hires us realtors to list that property and do our due diligence, and that's the big word.
Yes.
We have to do our due diligence. There are realtors or real estate agents, because there is a difference. A realtor subscribes to the ethics of the board. A real estate salesperson only does not have to, okay? If you could be sued. You could be sued and you could have to go to litigation and so forth if it was to be found out. Like I said, a builder who flips could still be. A homeowner has 6 years after he closes on a property to bring a lawsuit for any potential latent defects or non-disclosed defects of a home, and more than likely will win. And the realtor, the realtor salesperson, I should say, the broker, the seller can definitely have a major lawsuit on them.
Sure.
So the plume is the same thing. It's plastered on a listing, no plume, no flood, no plume. Many realtors in our town or from other towns tend to put that on there. It really isn't a true statement, because if it's in that 450 home area, it's still on a plume.
Yes.
It may not have a vapor plume emitting from the home, or the standards of the vapors may have diminished as per EPA, or risen. You can, I call it, you could breathe in more now all of a sudden. I don't agree with it, but that's another subject. But once that's plastered on a no flood, no plume, people are like, oh, good, okay, that's a property that isn't in a plume. But that seller knows that his property still is above a groundwater plume. So if he doesn't give a disclosure, which there's no New Jersey law yet that says you have to fill out a seller's disclosure, but most brokers will demand we can't take a listing unless we have a seller's disclosure to accompany that listing packet. Because we need to know, because like I said, the lawsuits can be brought on. You've got 6 years. If you don't learn of it before you close, you can learn of it after you close and still bring a major lawsuit to a builder, a realtor, a broker. So anyway.
Thank you. That's good information. Anyone else from the public like to address? Step up.
Hi, Andrew Friendly, 157 Laurel Avenue. After considering everything that you guys stated in your reports and understanding the importance and feelings that a lot of people have regarding the DuPont and you voting on it and understanding why you voted on it, I noticed that you mentioned, Ms. Riker, you mentioned something in regards that you had a fiduciary responsibility to the town.
I didn't say to the town. I said to the constituents who elected us.
Okay. Did you consider the fact that in the event that the cleanup isn't done properly after you vote on this, that let's say businesses in the next 5 years, 10 years want to come into our town, they hire employees, or the DPW decides to move their facilities to their area, they hire employees. I know that based on the employer, the agency that works there, they don't always pay high wages for people. Sometimes they pay under minimum wage, sometimes they pay just minimum wage. When these people are working 40 hours a week, sometimes more, I know that even in full-time jobs, you work a lot more. When, let's say, these companies come into our town and they hire people, and those people now later on learn that they were affected by the remnants or any chemicals that existed after voting on this.
Well, let's stop you right there. You're making a big...
It's probably better than you stop her than I do.
You're making a very big assumption that this could happen. 2, the EPA standards for commercial property, which is what we're talking about, are set nationwide for this to happen. So what you're saying is you don't trust the national standards by the EPA to be honest of what they're doing. That is not something that's going to happen here in Pompton Lakes. That is something that would affect nationally and probably worldwide. The fact that it's commercial and the zoning is set that way to make it safe. And there's many steps involved and many buffers built into that to make that happen. Now, if something new was to show up, a different type of pollutant or something, once it shows up, then they would have to address it. But we can't talk about that until we know what that is.
Okay. That was after absorbing everything. I think that was my only concern, but I'd also like to express a little bit of a retort. I didn't state that.
Okay.
It wasn't in any of my statements. Just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public? Please step up.
Hello. Joyce Fern, 58 Manville. I just have a quick question about the first aid, the course, or
Oh, okay.
it's open to the public?
It's not right now, but if you are interested, so we want to fill every spot. We have a certain number of people.
Yes, 25.
So we're going to do what we have to do, but if you are interested, I'll put you on the list and I'll have them call you if we have a spot, if that's something you're interested in.
Sure, and I also want to know about will they do EpiPen certification, or do the schools do that, or?
The schools I'm not aware of. Tim, I don't know, do they do EpiPen? Wasn't on school.
They don't do certification for anybody, the nurses in the school.
Right, the nurses. This will not be EpiPen with us, no. This will be more of a mental awareness and getting people to the right help that they would need. But you would be identified, or the trained people would be identified as someone you can speak to if you have a concern.
Okay, so I thought you mentioned they do like CPR and everything else.
No,
This
no,
is
no.
mental health.
Mental health.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is in conjunction with mental health month.
No,
I'm
this is
sorry.
mental health.
Yeah.
And just one concern, I know when you closed like the Lakeside Ave Bridge, the traffic got rerouted through Mandeville, and I understand it's temporary, but the cars fly through.
I'm sure.
And maybe extra, if you're going to be closing the other bridges and the other streets, extra consideration to be given to other streets that are going to be passed through, because...
Can we pass that over to the police department? And I don't know do we know if that is the route right now? I don't even know.
No, I don't know, I'm not just concerned about Mandeville, but all the other streets, because kids walking home and everything else, and it is they're going to be using all those side streets as a therapy.
Yep, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to address? Seeing no one? Do you really want to come up? Come on.
Wait for him to say scene. Randy Hinton, 443 Montclair Avenue. Just a question for our Borough Administrator. You were talking about 2 phases for Colfax Avenue. Is that 1 phase the county and 1 phase us? Or is that 1 phase the county, 2 phases us? So it's 2 phases us from Jefferson to Pompton line. So it's say Jefferson to
I have the, I don't know.
Durham Street?
It's a split in half, I'm not quite sure what the split is.
I'm only asking you that, it's just from Shade Tree's point of view. The police chief called me the other day and took me for a little ride to show me a tree on Colfax Ave that was a concern of his. And I want to work it in with the phase of what you're doing with repaving the road, as opposed to Shade Tree just taking the tree down itself. So I'd like to know when those 2 phases were coming about.
Probably the Harding, at least, Harding. Probably the last.
Well, Harding is, that's halfway out.
Either way, it's not until next year anyway, so the design, they haven't even started the design and then the project, I'll let you know that.
Right, but I mean, the first phase of us would be next year, and then the second phase would be the following year?
21.
Yeah, okay, so this tree is on the following phase then, so we might have to address it sooner. Just want to bring up the attitude of the eggs. Yes, I see no goslings walking around town. I
agree.
So I think it was a success. And I want to thank Councilwoman Polidori for inviting me to the 3rd graders. They were very interesting. And, it was a great time. It was really a great time. Also, the 150 trees in the CSIP grant, like we're all talking about, is almost completed. But I want to thank Ann Tassinelli, the chairman. She worked hard on this CSIP grant, and other members of the Shade Tree Commission. But also, I want to thank so many people. Karen Murphy from REC. I was down in Hirschfield. Some of the trees were planted in the wrong area. Worked with her.
Did it work out?
And we got them moved. John Wegley. I talked to Jim Curran from the Board of Education. We were looking to plant trees opposite the tennis courts, along the fence line there in the ball field there. Speaking to Jim Curran, he had told me that there's an injection for the field house to bring sewerage up, and it may not be a good place for trees. So I called John Wegley. John Wegley said, no, it's not a good place. So all these people tied into that. John Winston, our New Jersey expert, certified tree expert. Jeff Bolzer, the landscaper who planted. Kevin Boyle, who's helped us a lot. And Liz, who's done a lot of copies and stuff for us in reference to this. So there was so many people involved in this tree planting. And even Warren Benham, we talked to her, ex-Benham's wife, about different trees in different locations. And so I want to say this is a team effort, and a lot of effort to plant 150 trees, find spots for them. So I want to thank all involved.
And I have a question from a resident that I didn't know the answer to about the tree planting. When you put the trees back on the properties, do you speak to the residents first about where it's going, or you just put the tree in a spot?
No, we have to do utility markouts first, and that tells us where the tree could possibly go. And I grew up in town, I'm a taxpayer in town, just like all of you, and we take the residents' concerns. I mean, I talked with Mr. and Mrs. Vennon about where the tree was going to go, type of tree. We try to talk to the residents as best we can.
That's what I want to
Do we have to? No, it's borough property. But we try to work with the resident as best we can.
Okay.
Because we need them to also help to take care of the tree.
Okay, that's what
And the trees in Moran Park, 3 of them were hollow. And it's a good thing that we got them down. Downs came in and took them down.
Yeah, they're hollow.
And we planted 5 trees at Pacifico Gallo Park. We planted trees in Moran Park and at Hirschville Park. We stayed away from Stiles Park because that's with the Morris Canal Greenway, and they have their tree planting there, so we pretty much stayed out of there. But once those trees are turned over to the Shade Tree Commission, we'll work with Councilman DeLine and Councilman Bennett. Maybe we can add a few more trees in there also.
Good.
So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I want to thank the explanation for Councilwoman Riker, Councilman Begg, and Councilman Polidari on their viewpoint on Ordinance 1913. But to my disappointment, if you could have just postponed it 2 months till we had people to explain it a little better, I think it would have been helpful. So I am disappointed that the 5 of you voted no. But other than that, trees are growing, and these aren't. Thank you.
Good. How about the deer? Are they growing?
There's not many deer.
You spoke already. Allison spoke already. I can't let you speak. Then I gotta let everybody speak. I can't. Then I gotta let you spoke. You can't do it. Can't, sorry.
Thank you, Randy.
Mike Samore, West Lenox Avenue. Randy, were you in the front seat or the back seat of the Chief's car? No. Just kidding. Couple things. I've seen a few posts and comments about maintenance of the parks in town, and that there's been some graffiti and there's been some parts of the park equipment that's been damaged. Is the DPW charged with keeping up with that, or who gets to that?
The DPW is in charge of that, but, they don't inspect the parks on a daily basis. So we do rely on residents to make a call. There's nothing wrong with a resident calling the DPW and saying, look, there's graffiti on this thing, could you please look at it? And if they don't address it, I have no problem them calling me or calling their administrator and saying, look, it wasn't addressed. Same thing with potholes, while we're talking about that. I get a lot of calls about potholes. There's nothing stopping any resident from calling the DPW and saying, look, my street has a lot of potholes, could you come look at it? If it doesn't get done, then you can make a call again to our administrator or to myself, and we'll follow up with it. But, they're willing to work with the residents on that, so.
But the ultimate thing was the DPW would take care of any deficiencies.
As long as they can, yeah. I mean, we had one instance where we had a tunnel that was burned from the inside with like a fire of some sort. They couldn't really repair that, so we had to buy a new one, but.
I'm just concerned because obviously when children are playing in the playground and, there's a lot of brouhaha about all the dangers. And I know a while ago we had one child at, I think it was Lincoln School, that had a problem with a finger because, it's just a maintenance thing, but instead of being reactive, maybe proactive would be better. If they could establish a program where, once every couple of weeks they hit each playground. It's not like that, it's going to take them 15 days.
Okay.
So, just for what it's worth.
Will you note that and let them know?
On our ordinance 1913, I just want to say that I understand all of the questions and answers, and I think you guys did a commendable job of listening, and Mayor, you responding in as many of the ways as you could, since much of it is really not in the borough's hands anyway. And I understand it was a difficult decision. I think I would have preferred if there was another way to do it, but I think you all did your due diligence. And that's really what I wanted to hear is, any time that there's an issue, when I was on the council, it's the same thing. You try to do the due diligence and see the big picture, because you are responsible for 11 or 12,000 people, and you do the research, you talk to the people that are in the know, and you make your decision to the best of your judgment. And I just want to commend you all on doing all of that and coming up with the decision that you made. And I respect the fact that you guys had a difficult task, and thank you for proceeding in it the way you did. I think it's respectable to do what you guys did.
Thank you.
And that's all I have, thanks.
Please step up.
As we come Howard Street, Pompton Lakes, I just wanted to get a follow-up on the DuPont Bridge with the gaping hole in it, with the steel plate that shuffled away from and now in the flooding area at the north end of DuPont, Howard Street that I told you about, 2 geese moved in, but they have no goslings.
Next year they might, we'll be there.
And then I still have that 6.5-foot pothole over there, they put stone in it, but it's full of water. I mean, the stone comes flying out when the garbage trucks go through it, and, other trucks come through the area. But my main concern is, numerous times when you shut down Wanacue Avenue for, events for our town, to promote downtown business and car shows and everything else, they send the buses down Cannonball Road, they make a right onto that DuPont Place Bridge. One of these days, somebody's going to be in the drink. Our own fire trucks, I believe, and garbage trucks don't go over that bridge. Yet, when we have the downtown closed, we're sending buses over the bridge with people on it. So, at some point, I'm not an engineer, but structurally, it's a very short span. Even if you drove 2 steel plates across the whole span, you'd probably straighten it up a little bit, but
here's the problem.
With all these Skylar being shut, I'm just saying, and if a truck goes to go to Valbruna and it gets the wrong GPS coordinates, it comes across that street, like I told you, the signs on the DuPont Place side that says no trucks over 10 tons or whatever, or 3 tons, and you don't see it from Cannonball Road until you make the right-hand turn, you're over the bridge.
But maybe we could get a sign at least on the Cannonball side too. I agree with, we don't want trucks going.
You don't see the sign until you make the right.
No, we can get it more on the front.
But before you, close Wanacue Ave and divert traffic through that section again, that bridge, I don't think it can support that kind of weight. That's all I'm trying to make a point.
The problem with that bridge is, and it's an unfortunate mix-up of everything, but no one is taking ownership, and the first person that starts working on that bridge is going to be the owner of that bridge. It's like the last man standing. So, we understand that there's a situation. And look, I personally believe, and this is just me talking personally, I kind of believe it's a DuPont bridge. That's my thing. And I've reached out, and if I can get any documentation, I've got people we looked for, can't find it documented anywhere. I called the state on it, and what do they do with these orphan bridges? It goes on a list like everything else and sits there. We'll have to talk and make a determination what we're going to do with that. But as soon as we start doing work there, it becomes ours. And then that means we're replacing the whole bridge. That's what's going to happen. So it's a tough spot. I understand what you're saying. It's in bad shape. There is that huge hole, but we'll have to talk about it a little bit. Anyone else from the public like to address? Please step up.
Good evening, Dave Rowan, Romaine Avenue. I'd like to commend the council and the mayor on the decision tonight. My question is, Kevin, with all the paving that we're doing, is that going to affect the Memorial Day parade? Rerouting traffic and all that?
I can't do much about the fact the bridge is going to be closed for Memorial Day.
But Colfax Ave will be clear?
Colfax, the bridge will be accepted in May. So the county is going to start that project probably until July.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so our paving is on Montauk Ave, so we're not going to be impacting that either, so we'll be all right.
But it is a good point that the bridge will be closed for Memorial Day, yeah, that's correct. But it doesn't really affect the march or the parade or the ceremony, but we should make residents aware that if they're coming from that end of town to get there, you can't go that way, that's all.
There's a lot of fire departments and everyone's going to come from out of town, they might want to...
Yeah, they might, so we'll have to make sure they know that when we send it out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to address? Seeing no one, can I have a motion to close the public session? Councilman Begg, Councilman President Riker, all in favor? Aye. Against? Privilege of the floor. I hope no one has privilege of the floor. Does anybody have privilege of the floor? No. Okay, motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second.
Councilman Bennett, Councilman Giacomelli, thank you all for coming.
So we did.